The wolf was dying in her arms, and Mira was singing like it was the only language left in the world. Not a lullaby, not a prayer. Something older than both. His blood wasn't red. It was silver, pooling beneath him like liquid starlight, soaking into the frost-covered ground, steaming in the cold night air. His breathing came in broken, rattling gasps, each one sounding like the earth itself was cracking open. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he'd collapsed at the edge of the forest where she'd been gathering herbs under the moonlight. She only knew that when she'd seen him, massive, dark-furred, eyes flickering with something too aware, too ancient to be just animal, her chest had tightened with a grief she couldn't name. And so she sang. Her voice poured out of her, low and aching, wrapping around the wolf like a net woven from moonbeams and memory. The wind stopped. The trees leaned in. Even the shadows seemed to pause, listening. She didn't understand it. She never had. Her voice did things it shouldn't. Calmed storms that had no right to quiet. Made wild things bow their heads. Pulled tears from the eyes of people who swore they'd forgotten how to cry. Her grandmother had warned her years ago, before she died, "Your voice is not a gift, child. It's a key. And you don't yet know what door it opens." Mira had spent her whole life trying not to find out. But tonight, with this dying wolf trembling against her chest, she didn't care about warnings or fear or the strange way the world bent around her when she sang. She only cared that he was slipping away, and she refused to let him go. Then he started to change. Before we continue, please subscribe and let us know where you are watching from. It wasn't like the stories. There was no elegant shift, no smooth transformation. His bones cracked. Loudly. The sound split through the night air like branches breaking under ice, and Mira flinched, but didn't let go. For reseated in waves, replaced by skin that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. His body convulsed, limbs elongating, reshaping, the wolf's massive frame condensing into someone human. But not just human. She could see markings across his skin. Not tattoos. Something deeper. They glowed faintly, silver like his blood, tracing patterns across his shoulders, down his arms, curling around his ribs like ancient script written in a language she'd never learned but somehow recognized in the deepest parts of her soul. His face was sharp, carved from something between brutality and beauty, his hair dark and wild, still damp with sweat and frost. And he was still dying. Myra's song faltered for only a heartbeat before she steadied it, her hands pressed against his chest, feeling the stuttering rhythm of his heart beneath her palms. She didn't know what she was doing. She never did when the music took over. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was instinct. Reflex. Like breathing, but older. Deeper. Her voice rose, not louder, but fuller. Richer. The notes twisted and climbed, carrying something she didn't have words for. The air around them shimmered. She felt warmth spreading from her hands into his chest, felt the silver glow of his markings pulse in time with her melody. His eyes snapped open. They were molten gold. Burning. Piercing. Fixed entirely on her. And somewhere far away, beyond the forest, beyond the mountains, across distances she couldn't measure, something shifted. She felt it like a tremor beneath her skin. Like the world had just tilted on its axis and forgotten to tell her why. The wolf-turned man's lips parted. His breathing was still ragged, but no longer dying. No longer breaking. He stared at her like she was something holy. Something impossible. Then, in a voice rough as gravel and soft as smoke, he whispered, "I know your voice." Myra's song cut off abruptly. Silence rushed in to fill the space, thick and suffocating. What? The word barely made it past her lips. His hand lifted, trembling, weak, and his fingers brushed against her cheek. The touch sent a jolt through her entire body, electric and searing and wrong in a way that also felt devastatingly right. "I've loved it all my life," he breathed. That's when she felt it. The pull. It slammed into her chest like a fist made of fire and fate, stealing the air from her lungs. A bond. No, the bond. The one the elders spoke of in hushed, reverent tones. The one she'd stopped believing in years ago when she'd been cast out of her pack for being too strange, too dangerous, too other. A mate bond. But that was impossible. She didn't know this man. She'd never seen him before. She'd never even heard his voice until 30 seconds ago. And yet, her soul was screaming his name like it had been carved there since birth. Before she could speak, before she could process the impossibility of what was happening, the earth beneath them began to tremble. Not a small quake. A full-bodied shudder that rattled her teeth and sent cracks spider-webbing through the frozen ground. The trees groaned. The sky seemed to darken, clouds rushing in from nowhere, swallowing the moonhole. And then she heard it. The howls. Not one. Not two. Dozens. Hundreds, maybe. Rising from every direction, filling the night with a sound so primal and overwhelming that Myra's entire body locked up in terror. The man in her arms tensed. His jaw clenched. Despite his weakened state, he pushed himself up, forcing his body into a sitting position with a grimace of pain. His golden eyes scanned the forest, sharp and alert, predatory in a way that made her pulse spike. They felt it, he said, voice low and deadly calm. Felt what? Mira demanded, her voice shaking. He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze nearly knocked her backward. Me? Claiming you. The words hit her like a slap. You didn't, I didn't have to. His hand was still on her cheek, thumb brushing just beneath her eye, and the tenderness in the gesture was at complete odds with the dangerous edge in his voice. The bond did it for me. Every alpha on this continent just felt the shift. They know. Know what? Myra's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. That I found you. The howls were getting closer. She could hear movement now, the sound of paws, dozens, hundreds of them, thundering through the underbrush. Trees shook. The ground vibrated with the weight of an approaching army. Mira scrambled to her feet, nearly tripping over her own terror. Who are you? The man rose with her, slower, still clearly injured, but standing nonetheless. He towered over her, broad-shouldered and radiating a power that made the air around him feel heavier. The markings on his skin pulsed brighter, reacting to her proximity. Frederick, he said simply. Like the name should mean something. Like it should rewrite everything she thought she knew about the world. It didn't. She'd never heard it before. But her soul shuddered anyway, recognizing something her mind refused to accept. You need to run, he said, his voice hardening. They're coming for you. Why? I didn't do anything. You saved me. His eyes burned into hers. And that changes everything. The first wolf broke through the tree line. Then another. And another. They poured into the clearing like a flood, massive and feral and utterly, terrifyingly coordinated. But they didn't attack. They circled. Surrounded them. Eyes glowing in the darkness, gold, green, amber, blue, all fixed on Mira and the man standing beside her. And then, one by one, they began to lower themselves to the ground. Not in submission. In reverence. Myra's breath caught in her throat. What's happening? Frederick's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers with a possessiveness that should have terrified her but instead felt like the only solid thing in a world that had just stopped making sense. They're kneeling, he said quietly, his voice rough with something that sounded almost like awe. For you. That's insane. I'm nobody. You're mine. The words were barely a whisper, but they echoed through the clearing like a command. Like a truth the universe had been waiting for. The wolves lowered their heads. The wind died completely. And Mira realized, with a clarity that felt like ice water in her veins, that her life as she knew it had just ended. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to demand answers, explanations, anything that would make this make sense. But all she could do was stand there, hand in his, surrounded by kneeling wolves and a silence so heavy it felt like the world was holding its breath. Frederick turned to her, his golden eyes searching her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. "I'm sorry," he said, and the brokenness in his voice made her chest ache. "I didn't mean for this to happen. Not like this." "What are you talking about?" Her voice cracked. "You deserved better." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gesture so gentle it felt wrong coming from someone who looked like he could tear the world apart with his bare hands. "You deserved a choice." "But the bond," he exhaled shakily. "It doesn't ask. It just is." Tears pricked at Myra's eyes, though she didn't know why. She didn't know this man. She didn't know what was happening. But some deep, ancient part of her felt like it was mourning something it had lost a long time ago. Or maybe something it was about to lose. "What do I do?" she whispered. Frederick's grip on her hand tightened. "You trust me." And before she could answer, before she could process the impossibility of trusting a stranger who'd just upended her entire existence, the wolves began to howl again. But this time, it wasn't chaotic. It was a song. A chorus. And it sounded, impossibly, like a coronation. Mira didn't know it yet, but in that moment, surrounded by wolves singing her name in a language she didn't speak, standing beside a man whose soul seemed to recognize hers in ways that defied logic, her story was just beginning. And if you're the kind of person who needs to know what happens when fate doesn't ask permission, when love is written in stars and scars and stolen songs under moonlight, then maybe you belong here. Maybe this is your story too. But for now, Mira was still trying to breathe. Still trying to understand why the world had bent itself around her voice. Still trying to figure out why every instinct in her body was screaming two completely opposite truths. Run from him. And never let him go. The wolves didn't move. They stayed frozen in their positions, heads bowed, bodies pressed low to the frost-covered ground. The clearing had become a living tableau of submission and reverence, and Mira stood at the center of it, feeling like she was drowning in air. Frederick's hand was still wrapped around hers, warm and solid and impossibly steady considering he'd been bleeding silver and dying less than 10 minutes ago. She could feel his pulse through his palm, strong now, rhythmic, alive in a way that seemed to defy everything she'd just witnessed. The markings on his skin had stopped glowing quite so brightly, but they were still visible in the moonlight that had begun to peek back through the rapidly dispersing clouds. They moved. She was sure of it. The pattern shifted subtly across his shoulders and down his arms, like living things written in an alphabet she'd never learned but felt in her bones. He was looking at her. She could feel the weight of his gaze even though she was staring at the wolves, at the impossible scenes surrounding them, at anything but his face. Because looking at him felt dangerous. Not in the way a predator is dangerous. In the way that falling is dangerous. Inevitable and terrifying and somehow, inexplicably, exactly what some hidden part of her wanted. Finally, she forced herself to meet his eyes. The gold in them had dimmed slightly, less molten now, more like aged amber lit from within. But the intensity hadn't faded. If anything, it had deepened. He was studying her face like he was searching for something. Like he was trying to solve a puzzle that had haunted him for years. "How do you know my voice?" The question came out steadier than she felt. Something flickered across his expression. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. Or both tangled together so tightly they'd become the same thing. "That's complicated," he said quietly. "Then uncomplicate it." She pulled her hand from his, immediately regretting it when the loss of contact felt like losing something vital. "You said you've loved it all your life. But I've never met you. I've never even seen you before tonight." "I know. That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." The frustration building in her chest was acidic and sharp. "Who are you? And I don't mean your name. I mean, who are you that every wolf in hearing distance just showed up and bowed? Who are you that claiming me as a mate?" She stumbled over the word, still unable to fully process it, sends shockwaves across a continent. Frederick was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the wolves remained perfectly still, but she could feel their attention. They were listening. Waiting. "I'm the Alpha King," he said finally, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Or I was. Before I fell." The title hit her like a physical blow. Alpha King. She'd heard stories, of course. Every shifter had. Legends about the first rulers, the ancient bloodlines, the kings and queens who'd shaped the packs when the world was young. But those were myths. Bedtime stories for children. Historical fairy tales that had no place in the modern world. Except he was standing in front of her, marked with symbols that looked older than language itself, and every wolf within miles had dropped to their knees the moment he'd claimed her. "You're lying," she whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. "I wish I was." The brokenness in his voice made her chest tighten. "It would be easier." "Easier than what?" "Than this. Than you." He took a step closer, and she should have stepped back, but she didn't. Couldn't. "Do you know what it's like to wait for something so long you start to believe it'll never come? To search for centuries, wearing yourself down to nothing until you're convinced you imagined it in the first place." His words struck something deep inside her, resonated with a loneliness she'd carried for so long it felt like part of her skeleton. "And then you hear it," he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "In the darkness. While you're bleeding out and your soul is trying to claw its way out of your body. You hear the one thing you've been waiting for, and it's more beautiful than you remembered, and you realize," he stopped, his jaw clenching. "You realize you were never going to die. Not really. Not before this." Myra's hands were shaking. "Before what?" "Before I found you again." Again. The word hung between them like a blade. "We've never met," she said, but her voice wavered. "No," he agreed. "We haven't." "Then how?" "I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so human, so vulnerable, it cracked something in her defensive walls. "I don't understand it either. I just know that when I heard you sing, it wasn't new. It was familiar. Like coming home after being lost so long you'd forgotten what home felt like." A wolf to their left shifted slightly, drawing Myra's attention. It was enormous, even by shifter standards, with silver-tipped fur and eyes that gleamed intelligent green. The way it held itself, even in a bowed position, spoke of power barely contained. Frederick followed her gaze, and something in his expression hardened. "You can rise, Stellan," he said, his voice taking on a commanding edge that made the air feel heavier. "All of you. But stay back." The wolves obeyed immediately, lifting their heads, settling into seated positions, but not approaching. The silver-tipped one, Stellan, apparently shifted. The transformation was smoother than Frederick's had been, probably because he wasn't dying. In moments, a man crouched where the wolf had been. Tall, muscular, with sharp features and silver-streaked dark hair. He didn't stand fully. Remained in a half-bow, head lowered. "My king," he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. We believed you were dead." Frederick's laugh was bitter. "Nearly. Would have been if not for her." Stellan's green eyes flicked to Mira, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Wonder. And beneath it, fear. "The bond," Stellan said carefully. "We felt it snap into place. All of us. From the Pacific coast to the Atlantic, every alpha with enough power to sense the currents, they felt it." He paused. "They'll be coming. I know. Some will challenge." "I know," Frederick repeated, firmer this time. "Let them come." Stellan's gaze lingered on Mira for another moment before he lowered his head again. "As you command." Myra's mind was reeling. Wait. What does he mean? They'll challenge. Challenge what? Frederick turned back to her, and the protectiveness in his expression was so fierce it stole her breath. "Me," he said simply. "For you." The words should have sounded possessive. Should have triggered every independent instinct she had. But the way he said it, like he was stating a fact he'd fight gods to defend, sent heat spiraling through her chest. "I'm not a prize to be won," she managed. "No," he agreed immediately. "You're not. He stopped, his brow furrowing like he was trying to find words that didn't exist. "You're the reason the world makes sense again. You're the answer to a question I forgot I was asking. You don't even know me." Her voice cracked. The look he gave her was devastating. Don't I? And that's when it happened. Mira opened her mouth to argue, to tell him he was insane, that this whole situation was impossible. And he spoke at the exact same time, saying the exact words that were forming in her mind. This is insane. None of this should be possible. They both stopped, stared at each other. Myra's heart was suddenly hammering against her ribs. How did you? I don't know. He looked as shaken as she felt. I just knew you were going to say that. I could feel it. That's not how mate bonds work. She'd heard enough stories, knew enough lore. Mates could sense emotions, sometimes intentions, but not full thoughts. Not exact words before they were spoken. I know, Frederick said quietly. This isn't normal. Even for fated mates, this isn't. He reached for her hand again, slower this time, giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. The moment their fingers touched, warmth flooded through her. And something else. A flash of something. Not quite a vision. More like a feeling with images attached. Stone halls lit by torchlight. The scent of night-blooming flowers. A laugh that sounded like hers, but wasn't. Not quite. She gasped and jerked back. Frederick's expression had gone carefully blank, but his eyes betrayed him. He'd felt it too. What was that? Mira demanded. I don't know. Stop saying that. The frustration exploded out of her. You clearly know more than you're telling me. You show up dying in the forest, you claim me as your mate. Every wolf in existence apparently knows who you are, and now we're having shared visions or memories or whatever that was. They're not my memories. The quiet certainty in his voice stopped her cold. What? Frederick looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her want to run and hold him at the same time. The things I'm seeing. The things I know about you that I shouldn't. He swallowed hard. They don't feel like things I've learned. They feel like things I've forgotten. Like they've always been there, buried so deep I couldn't reach them until... Until what? Until I heard you sing. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications neither of them understood. Around them, the other wolves were starting to shift, becoming human, though they all maintained their distance. Stellan remained closest, watchful and tense, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line like he was expecting an attack. Mira wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how cold the night had gotten. Or maybe she'd just been too overwhelmed to notice before. Frederick noticed immediately. Before she could protest, he was shrugging off the dark cloak he wore. Where had that even come from? Had he been wearing it the whole time and draping it around her shoulders? It smelled like pine and smoke and something else. Something that made her want to bury her face in the fabric and breathe deep. Thank you, she said quietly. You saved my life. His hand lingered on her shoulder, his touch gentle despite the obvious strength in his fingers. It's the least I can do. Why were you dying? The question came out softer than she'd intended. What happened to you? Pain flashed across his face. Betrayal. The kind that comes from people you trusted enough to call family. She knew that pain. Knew it intimately. Your pack, she asked. My council. 3 of them decided that my time as king had ended. That I was too damaged, too focused on chasing ghosts, too. He stopped, his jaw tightening. They poisoned me with silver. Not enough to kill immediately. Just enough to weaken me so they could finish it properly. Make it look like I'd fallen in battle. But you escaped. Barely. I shifted, ran as far as I could before the poison really took hold. I was trying to reach Sanctuary, an ancient place where the old laws still hold, where even traitors wouldn't dare follow. His eyes found hers. I didn't make it. I collapsed about 2 miles from here. Was planning to die quietly under the stars. But I found you. No. His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her cheek, the touch sending electricity down her spine. You saved me. There's a difference. Myra's breath caught. Your wounds, the silver in your blood, I don't understand how my voice could heal that. It shouldn't be possible. And yet, his thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the caress so tender it made her eyes sting. You did it anyway. I don't even know what I did. I just sang and... Your voice is power, Mira. The way he said her name, like it was sacred, made her shiver. Ancient power. The kind that predates packs and politics and everything we think we know about our world. How do you know that? The question hung in the air between them. Frederick's expression shifted, confusion and certainty warring in his eyes. I don't know, he admitted. But I do. Just like I know, he stopped himself, shaking his head. Know what? That you take your tea with honey, not sugar. That you hum when you're nervous. That you have a scar on your left shoulder from when you tried to climb the old oak tree behind your grandmother's house and the branch broke. His voice was getting rougher, more strained. That your favorite season is autumn because you love the way the world smells like wood smoke and endings that promise new beginnings. Myra's blood had turned to ice in her veins. Every single thing he'd just said was true. Every single thing he couldn't possibly know. How? Her voice broke. How do you know those things? Frederick looked as devastated as she felt. I have no idea, he whispered. But, Mira, I know them the same way I know my own name. Like they're facts written into my bones. She stumbled backward, and this time he let her go, his hand falling to his side. This wasn't just a mate bond. This was something else. Something impossible. Something that terrified her almost as much as it called to the deepest parts of her soul. Myra's grandmother had told her once that some people are born belonging to the world, and some people are born too strange for it. Mira had been 3 years old the first time she made it rain inside the house. She hadn't meant to. She'd been crying, some childish hurt, a scraped knee or a broken toy. She couldn't even remember now, and her grandmother had been trying to comfort her. But the tears wouldn't stop, and the more she cried, the more the air in the small cabin had grown heavy with moisture. Thick. Oppressive. Then the ceiling started weeping. Not leaking. Weeping. Drops of water forming from nothing, falling like tears from the wooden beams, until her grandmother was standing in the middle of the kitchen in a rainstorm that had no business existing. Her grandmother hadn't scolded her. Hadn't looked afraid. She'd just wrapped Mira in her arms and whispered, "Oh, little one, you're going to be magnificent. And the world is going to punish you for it." She'd been right. Mira was 7 when she discovered her voice could do more than carry a tune. The pack had been preparing for the full moon gathering, a celebration that brought all the families together for the hunt and the feast afterward. She'd been playing with the other children near the bonfire when one of the younger boys, Tomas, she still remembered his name, had shifted for the first time. It should have been a moment of joy. First shifts usually were. But something had gone wrong. His wolf had panicked, gone feral with the sudden overwhelming flood of new instincts and sensations. He'd started attacking everything around him, snapping and clawing, unable to distinguish friend from threat. The adults had been trying to subdue him without hurting him, but he was wild with terror, and someone was going to get seriously injured. Mira hadn't thought. She'd just opened her mouth and sung. Not words. Just sound. A melody that came from somewhere deeper than thought, older than language. Tomas had stopped mid-lunge. Frozen. Then slowly, impossibly, he lowered himself to the ground and shifted back to human, trembling and crying, but no longer dangerous. The entire pack had stared at her. That's when the whispers started. Unnatural. Dangerous. Too much power for a child. What else could she do? What else might she do without meaning to? By the time she was 12, half the pack wouldn't let their children play with her. By 15, she'd been asked to stay away from pack gatherings unless absolutely necessary. Her voice made people uncomfortable. The way animals followed her through the forest made people nervous. The incidents, small, always small, but undeniable, kept adding up. Lights that brightened when she was happy. Storms that broke when she was angry. The time she'd hummed a lullaby and put 17 wolves to sleep simultaneously, even though they'd been in the middle of a hunt. The final straw came 3 days after her 18th birthday. The pack alpha, Garrick, a hard man who ruled with tradition and an iron fist, had called her to his home. She'd gone, hoping maybe it was about finally accepting her, giving her a real place in the pack structure. Instead, he told her she had two choices: have her vocal cords magically bound by the pack witch, rendering her unable to sing or use her voice as power, or leave and never come back. "You're a threat to the natural order," he'd said, not unkindly, but with absolute certainty. "Your power doesn't follow the rules. It doesn't fit into what we know, what we can control. And what we can't control, we can't protect. Not you, and not the pack from you." She'd chosen exile. Not because she'd wanted to leave, but because the thought of having her voice bound, silenced, cut off from the one part of herself that felt true, it was worse than death. So she'd left, taken what little she owned, and walked away from the only home she'd ever known. That was 4 years ago. For years of drifting from place to place, never staying long enough for people to notice the strange things that happened around her. Never using her voice for more than the minimum necessary to get by. Never letting anyone close enough to see the power that hummed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. For years of loneliness so deep it had become part of her identity. And now this. A dying wolf who became a king. A mate bond that felt like destiny and doom tangled together. A man who knew things about her that he shouldn't, who looked at her like she was both a stranger and someone he'd been grieving for centuries. Mira pulled Frederick's cloak tighter around herself, very aware that he was still watching her. That all of them were watching her: Frederick, Stellan, the dozen or so other shifters who'd gathered in the clearing, all maintaining their distance, but utterly focused on her presence. She should run. Should shift and disappear into the forest before this got any more complicated. But her wolf, usually so in tune with her human instincts, was quiet, calm, more settled than Mira had felt in years. Because of him. Because some primal part of her recognized Frederick in a way that transcended logic or caution or self-preservation. "You're afraid." His voice startled her. He hadn't moved closer, was still giving her space, but the observation was gentle, not accusatory. "Of course I'm afraid," she said. "This is insane. Is it the bond? Or me? Both. Neither. I don't know." She forced herself to look at him. 3 hours ago, I was alone. I've been alone for 4 years. I chose alone because it was safer than letting people see what I am. And now you're telling me we're fated mates, that you somehow know intimate details about my life, that every alpha on the continent is going to come looking for what? To challenge you? To take me? I don't even understand what's happening." Frederick's expression softened with something that looked like understanding and regret. "You were exiled," he said quietly. Not a question. Mira stiffened. "How?" "I can see it in the way you stand. Like you're always ready to run. Like you don't trust the ground beneath your feet to stay solid." He took a slow breath. "And I can feel it. Your loneliness. It's in every note when you sing." The accuracy of that statement made her chest ache. "They were afraid of me," she said, the words coming out flat. "My old pack. They said my power didn't follow the natural order. That I was too dangerous to keep around unless I let them bind my voice." Anger flashed across Frederick's face, quick and fierce. "They wanted to bind you? They wanted to make me safe. Controllable." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I chose exile instead." "Good." The word came out hard, definitive. "Good. They didn't deserve you." He did move closer then, just a single step, but the intensity in his eyes made it feel like he'd crossed the entire clearing. Any pack that would try to diminish your power instead of helping you understand it, that would choose fear over nurturing, they didn't deserve to keep you. Something in Myra's chest cracked open. She'd spent 4 years telling herself the exile was her fault. That if she'd just been more normal, more controlled, more like everyone else, she could have stayed. Could have belonged. But Frederick was looking at her like her power was something sacred. Like she was something sacred. It was terrifying and intoxicating in equal measure. "I don't know what I am," she admitted quietly. "I don't know why my voice does what it does. My grandmother, she knew something, I think, but she died before she could tell me. All I have are fragments. Warnings. The sense that I'm connected to something old and important and completely beyond my understanding. Your grandmother, Frederick said slowly. What was her name? Eloan. Why? Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Or memory. Or both. Eloan, he repeated, like he was testing the name. Did she ever mention the Moon's Choir? Myra's breath caught. Once. Right before she died. She said I was part of it, that I carried its song in my blood. But I don't know what that means. Frederick's hand moved to his chest, pressing against where his heart would be, right over the markings that still glowed faintly beneath his skin. The Moon's Choir, he said quietly, is ancient. Older than the packs. Older than the bloodlines. It's said to be the original song, the sound the Moon Goddess sang when she breathed life into the first shifters. His eyes met hers. Only a handful of wolves in all of history have ever carried that gift. The ability to sing with her voice. To heal with it. To command with it. That's a myth, Mira whispered. So are Alpha Kings, Frederick countered. And yet here we both stand. She couldn't argue with that. If that's what I am, if I somehow carry this Moon's Choir, why? Why me? I don't know. But I know it's not random. Frederick's voice was certain. And I know that when you sang to me, when you pulled me back from death, it wasn't just healing. It was recognition. Like your power knew mine. Like they'd touched before. But they haven't. We haven't. The look he gave her was haunted. Haven't we? There it was again. That suggestion of something impossible. Something that didn't fit into any understanding of how the world worked. Myra's hands were shaking. She balled them into fists, trying to steady herself. I can't do this, she said. I can't be someone's fated mate when I don't even know who I am. I can't be pulled into, she gestured at the gathered wolves, at Stellan who was still watching them like a guard protecting something precious, into all of this when I've spent years learning to be nobody. To stay invisible. I know. Frederick's voice was so gentle it hurt. And if I could give you time, space to process, a choice about whether to accept this bond, I would. But Mira, the moment I claimed you, the moment every alpha felt the bond snap into place, a clock started ticking. What do you mean? It means they're coming. Tonight, tomorrow, within days at most. Alphas who've waited centuries for a sign that the old bloodlines might return. Alphas who want to challenge my right to rule. Alphas who will see you as a symbol, or a weapon, or a prize. His jaw tightened. And I need you to understand, I will defend you against every single one of them. I will burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you or take you from me. The ferocity in his voice should have been frightening. Instead, Mira felt something in her chest settle. Lock into place. Because as much as her mind was screaming that this was too fast, too much, too impossible, her soul was whispering something different. Safe. He feels safe. And she hadn't felt safe in 4 years. I don't trust easily, she said finally. I know. You keep saying that. That you know. Because I do. He held her gaze. I know you're terrified. I know you're confused. I know every instinct you have is telling you to run from this from me. And I know, his voice softened, that some part of you, the part that sang to a dying stranger and refused to let him go, wants to stay anyway. He was right. Goddess help her, he was right. What if I'm not who you think I am? The question came out small, vulnerable. What if this bond is a mistake? What if? Frederick closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face with a gentleness that made her want to cry. There is no mistake, he said, his voice rough with conviction. And you are exactly who you're meant to be. Powerful. Strange. Beautiful in ways that make the world nervous, because it doesn't know how to categorize you. His thumb brushed across her cheek, catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. You are the song I've been listening for my whole life. And I don't care if it makes sense. I don't care if it follows the rules. I only care that you're here. That you're real. That I'm not too late. Too late for what? She whispered. His expression cracked, showing the raw desperation underneath. To save you this time. The words didn't make sense. This time. Like there'd been another time. A before. But before Mira could ask, before she could push for answers to questions that were forming faster than she could voice them, Stellan's voice cut through the moment. "My king, we have company." The gentleness in Frederick's expression vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. He didn't let go of Mira, but his body shifted, positioning himself slightly in front of her, protective. "How many?" he asked, his voice carrying the command of someone used to leading. "3 alphas. They're seconds. Maybe 20 wolves total." Stellan's eyes were fixed on the eastern tree line. "They're not approaching with hostility. Not yet. But they're also not friendly." Frederick swore softly. "That was faster than I expected." "Word travels when a king rises from the dead and claims a mate in the same night," Stellan said dryly. Myra's heart was racing. "What do we do?" Frederick looked down at her, and the conflict in his eyes was painful to witness. "We face them," he said quietly. "Together. Because whether you're ready or not, whether I wanted this for you or not, they're going to demand to see you. To verify the bond. To test whether you're worthy." Anger sparked in Myra's chest, hot and bright. "Worthy? I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be claimed or bonded or thrown into pack politics. I know." He squeezed her hand. "But to them, you're not just a person. You're a symbol. The fated mate of the Alpha King. And if you're what I think you are, if you carry the moon's choir, you're more than that. You're proof that the old magic is returning. And if I'm not ready to be anyone's proof?" Frederick's smile was sad and understanding and fierce all at once. "Then we tell them that together." "But, Mira," his grip tightened on her hand, "I need you to trust me. Just for tonight. Just long enough to get through this. Can you do that?" She looked at him. Really looked at him. At the ancient markings on his skin, the gold in his eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses, the way he held himself like a king, but looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. She barely knew him. He knew impossible things about her. This whole situation defied logic. And yet, her wolf was calm. Her soul was certain. And some deep, inexplicable part of her that she'd learned to trust over 4 years of surviving alone was whispering the same word over and over. "Yes." "Okay," she said quietly. "Just for tonight. I'll trust you." The relief that flooded Frederick's expression was so profound it made her chest ache. "Thank you," he breathed. Then he turned to face the tree line, pulling her gently against his side, his arm wrapping around her waist in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. And Mira, who'd spent 4 years belonging to no one and nothing, let herself lean into his strength and wondered if maybe, just maybe, being found was worth the terror of being seen. The wolves emerged from the forest like shadows given form. And Myra's strange, solitary life shattered completely, leaving only the question of what would be built from the pieces. The 3 alphas stepped into the clearing with the kind of confidence that came from centuries of power. The first was a woman, tall and lean with silver hair braided down her back and eyes the color of ice. She moved like water, fluid and dangerous, every step deliberate. The second was broad-shouldered and scarred, his face a map of battles survived, his presence filling the space around him like a physical weight. The third was younger, maybe only a few decades old, but there was something ancient in his eyes that didn't match his appearance. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, their wolves fanning out behind them in a show of strength that wasn't quite a threat, but wasn't friendly either. Mira felt Frederick's arm tighten around her waist, subtle but protective. The silver-haired woman spoke first, her voice carrying easily across the distance. "So the rumors are true. The Lost King returns from the dead." "Hello, Vivian." Frederick's voice was cool, controlled. "It's been a long time. 53 years, Vivian replied. "Not that anyone was counting. We assumed you'd finally succumbed to your grief and walked into the sun." Her ice blue eyes shifted to Mira, and the assessment in them was sharp enough to cut. "But it seems you found something worth living for after all." The way she said it made Myra's skin prickle. Not with warmth. With warning. "This is Mira," Frederick said, and there was steel beneath the simple introduction. my mate. And she is under my protection, which means she is under the protection of the old laws. I trust you remember what that means, Vivian. Oh, we remember the old laws. The scarred alpha stepped forward, his voice gravelly. Question is, do they still apply when the king in question has been absent for half a century? When his council declared him lost and began the process of transferring power? The council doesn't have the authority to declare anything, Garrick. Frederick's voice dropped dangerously. And you know it, Garrick. The name hit Mira like a fist to the stomach. She stared at the scarred alpha, recognition flooding through her with sickening clarity. This was her old pack alpha, the man who'd exiled her. He hadn't recognized her yet. She'd changed in 4 years, filled out, grown into her features, let her hair grow long. But it was only a matter of time. Frederick must have felt her tension because he glanced down at her, concern flickering in his golden eyes. She gave the tiniest shake of her head. Not now. Later. The old laws, the younger alpha said, his voice smooth and calculated, also state that a mate bond must be verified. Particularly when the claimed mate appears to be. He paused, his strange ancient eyes fixed on Mira, unaffiliated with any pack. Without lineage verification. Without political value? Frederick's voice could have frozen fire. Is that what you were going to say, Cashin? Cashin smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I was going to say, without precedent. You've been gone a long time, Frederick. The world has changed. We don't simply accept claims on faith anymore. Especially not claims that shake the foundations of every pack from here to the Arctic. You felt the bond snap into place, Frederick said flatly. All of you did. Every alpha with enough power to sense the currents. Are you saying you doubt what your own instincts told you? We're saying, Vivian interjected smoothly, that what we felt was unprecedented. A bond of that magnitude, it's not natural. Not even for an alpha king. Her eyes narrowed on Mira, which raises questions about what exactly she is. The clearing had gone deathly quiet. Every wolf present was focused on the confrontation, the tension thick enough to choke on. Mira wanted to disappear. Wanted to shift and run and never look back. But Frederick's arm around her waist was an anchor, and some stubborn part of her refused to let these alphas see her fear. What I am, she said, her voice steadier than she felt, is none of your business. Vivian's eyebrows rose. Bold words for someone who's been alive less than a quarter century. Bold words for someone who knows her worth doesn't require your validation, Mira shot back. A ripple of reaction went through the gathered wolves. Stellan coughed in a way that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Even Frederick's lips twitched slightly. Vivian's expression remained cool, but something that might have been respect flickered in her ice-blue eyes. She has spirit, Vivian acknowledged. But spirit isn't lineage. Spirit isn't proof. She took a step closer. The old laws exist for a reason, Frederick. They protect the balance. And a mate bond of this magnitude, with a girl who has no pack, no history, no verified bloodline, it destabilizes everything. Then perhaps everything needs to be destabilized, Frederick said quietly. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Garrick's expression darkened. You would risk war? After everything our people have built? After the peace we've maintained? Peace built on stagnation isn't peace, Frederick replied. It's slow death. And you know it, Garrick. How many of the old bloodlines have faded to nothing? How many sacred sites have gone dormant? How much of our heritage has been lost because we chose comfort over truth? Pretty speech, Cashin said. But it doesn't answer the fundamental question. What is she? Because whatever the three of us felt when that bond formed, it wasn't just a mating. It felt like the world shifting on its axis. Like something that had been sleeping for a very long time suddenly waking up. Myra's breath caught. Because that description resonated with something deep inside her. Something that had stirred to life the moment she'd started singing over Frederick's dying form. Frederick was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. I don't have all the answers, he admitted. But I know the bond is real. I know she saved my life when she had no reason to. And I know, he paused, his arm tightening around Mira, that she is exactly who she's meant to be. Whether that fits your understanding of how things work or not. That's not good enough, Vivian said flatly. Not when every alpha on this continent is going to be demanding answers. Not when. She stopped abruptly, her head tilting, nostrils flaring. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. You feel it too, Stellan said quietly. It wasn't a question. Vivian's gaze snapped to him, then back to Mira. The scent. She moved closer, ignoring Frederick's warning growl. It's wrong. Or not wrong, but layered. Like 2 scents in one body. Ice flooded Myra's veins. What are you talking about? But Vivian was circling now, slow and deliberate, her expression shifting from suspicion to confusion to something that looked almost like awe. There's you, she said, gesturing to Mira. Pine and rain and something wild. But underneath, she stopped directly in front of Mira, close enough that Frederick moved protectively between them. Underneath there's something else. Something older. Like night-blooming flowers and silver moonlight and... She stopped, her face going pale. Impossible, she breathed. What? Mira demanded. What do you smell? Vivian looked at Frederick, and for the first time since entering the clearing, there was uncertainty in her expression. You know, she said to him. Don't you? That's why the bond felt like that. Why it shook the foundations. Frederick's jaw was tight, his expression carefully controlled. I have theories. Nothing confirmed. Theories? Garrick had moved closer too, his scarred face creased with confusion. What are you two talking about? Vivian ignored him, her attention still fixed on Frederick. The Luna's garden. You need to take her there. No. The word came out hard, final. Frederick. I said no. It's too dangerous. If I'm wrong. And if you're right? Vivian's voice dropped. If she's what I think she is, what I'm smelling in her very blood, then the garden is the only place that can verify it. The only place that will recognize her. Someone want to explain what the hell you're talking about? Cashin's smooth voice had an edge now. Myra's heart was hammering. She pulled away from Frederick, turning to face him directly. What is the Luna's garden? And what does she think I am? The conflict in Frederick's expression was painful to witness. It's an ancient place. Sacred. Where the first Luna was said to have walked when the moon was young. He ran a hand through his hair. No one's been able to enter it for over 300 years. The magic that protects it only responds to the Luna's bloodline, Vivian finished. To those who carry her essence in their very bones. The words settled over Mira like a weight she didn't know how to carry. That's impossible, she said. I don't have any special bloodline. I'm nobody. An exile from a minor pack in the middle of nowhere. But even as she said it, she thought of her grandmother's words. The moon's choir. The strange power in her voice. The way animals followed her, the way storms responded to her emotions, the way she'd healed a dying Alpha King with nothing but a song. Garrick was staring at her now, and she saw the moment recognition hit. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to something darker. Mira, he said, his voice rough with disbelief. Little Mira from the mountain pack? She lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. Hello, Garrick. You know her? Vivian looked between them sharply. She was from my pack, Garrick said slowly. Years ago. Before he stopped, something that might have been shame flickering across his features. Before she left. Before you exiled her for having power you couldn't control, Frederick said, his voice deadly quiet. Garrick's eyes narrowed. How did you? Because I can feel her memories like they're written on my skin, Frederick said, and there was something raw in his voice. Because I know things about her I have no logical way of knowing. Because he stopped, his fists clenching. Because whatever this bond is, it goes deeper than anything I've ever heard of. Deeper than should be possible. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Cashin spoke, his ancient eyes gleaming with something that looked like hunger. Take her to the Luna's garden, he said. If she can enter, if the magic recognizes her, then we'll have our answer. We'll know what she is. And if I refuse? Frederick's voice was cold. Then you prove you're afraid of what we might discover, Vivian said. And an alpha king who rules from fear is no king at all. It was a trap. A clever political trap. Refuse, and Frederick looked weak, afraid, unworthy of the title he claimed. Accept and what? Mira would be tested by magic that hadn't responded to anyone in 3 centuries? Magic that was supposed to recognize Luna's bloodline? She thought of her grandmother again. Of the secrets in her eyes. Of the way she'd said, just before she died, "You are so much more than they know, little one. So much more than even you know." "I'll do it," Mira heard herself say. Frederick's head snapped toward her. "Mira, no. If it's the only way to get answers, to prove I'm not a threat or a trick or whatever they think I am, then I'll do it." She looked at Vivian, then Garrick, then Cashin. "Where is this garden?" 2 hours north, Vivian said. "In the heart of the old forest, where the ancient pines grow so thick the sun never touches the ground." Mira knew the place. She'd felt drawn to it before, during her years of wandering. Had stood at its edges and felt something calling to her from deep within. But she'd never entered. Something had always stopped her. An instinct that said not yet. Maybe this was the yet. "We go at dawn," Frederick said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "And if any of you try to interfere, if you do anything to hurt her or manipulate this test." "We're not your enemies, Frederick," Vivian said quietly. "We're trying to understand. Trying to make sense of a bond that felt like the world breaking open. If she is what I suspect," she looked at Mira with something that might have been reverence, "then everything changes. For all of us." "What do you suspect?" Mira demanded. "Stop talking around it and just say it." Vivian met her eyes, and the weight of centuries was in her gaze. "I suspect," she said slowly, "that you carry the soul fragment of the first Luna. The one who was mate to the first Alpha King. The one whose death nearly destroyed our entire race." She paused. "The one who was Frederick's true mate, 300 years ago, before she was torn from him in a way that should have killed you both." The world tilted. Mira heard the words, understood them on an intellectual level, but they made no sense. Soul fragment? First Luna? 300 years ago? She looked at Frederick, waiting for him to deny it, to call Vivian insane. But he didn't. His expression was devastated. Guilty. And beneath it all, desperately hopeful. "Frederick." Her voice came out broken. "I don't know," he said, and she could hear the truth in it. "I don't know if that's what you are. But I know." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle despite the tremor in his fingers. "I know that when I look at you, part of me sees someone I've lost. Someone I've grieved for so long it became part of who I am. And I know that's not fair to you. That you deserve to be seen as yourself, not as an echo of someone else. But you can't help it," she finished. "No," he admitted. "I can't." Myra's mind was reeling. This explained so much. The impossible knowledge. The memories that weren't his. The way the bond felt too deep, too ancient, too complete. But it also meant she might not be entirely her own person. Might be carrying someone else's soul, someone else's identity, woven into her very existence without her knowledge or consent. The thought was terrifying. "The garden will know," Vivian said softly. "If you are the Luna reborn, or her fragment, or something else entirely, the garden will recognize the truth." Mira wanted to scream. Wanted to run. Wanted to wake up and discover this was all some fever dream brought on by too many nights alone in the forest. But the weight of Frederick's hand in hers was real. The golden eyes watching her with such desperate, complicated emotion were real. This was her life now. Strange. Impossible. Completely beyond her control. Just like it had always been. "Fine," she said, her voice hollow. "We go at dawn. But I want one thing clear." All eyes turned to her. "Whatever that garden reveals, whatever I am or aren't, I'm not a prize to be claimed or a symbol to be used." She looked at each of the alphas in turn. "I'm a person. And I make my own choices. Understood?" A slow smile spread across Vivian's face. "Oh, I like her." Garrick just looked uncomfortable, like he was reassessing every decision he'd made about her 4 years ago. Cashin nodded once, something that might have been approval in his ancient eyes. And Frederick looked at her like she'd just said something profound and heartbreaking and perfect all at once. Understood, he said quietly. The 3 visiting alphas withdrew then, taking their wolves with them but not leaving entirely. They'd camp at the clearing's edge, Vivian said. Bear witness to whatever tomorrow would bring. As they disappeared into the tree line, Mira felt the last of her strength drain away. Her knees buckled, and only Frederick's quick reflexes kept her from collapsing. I've got you, he murmured, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. She should have protested. Should have insisted she could walk. But she was so tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of being strange. Tired of carrying questions she had no answers for. So she let him carry her, let her head rest against his shoulder, and tried not to think about what tomorrow might reveal. Tried not to wonder if the person she thought she was had ever truly existed at all. Frederick carried Mira to a cave hidden behind a waterfall about half a mile from the clearing. She barely registered the journey, lost in the spiral of her own thoughts. Soul fragment. Luna reborn. 300 years. The words kept circling her mind like wolves stalking prey, and she couldn't seem to shake them loose. The cave was larger than she expected, with smooth stone walls that caught the moonlight filtering through the falling water and turned it into something ethereal. Someone, probably Stellan, based on the efficient organization, had already brought supplies. Furs for sleeping. A fire burning low in a natural pit. Food and water arranged on a flat stone that served as a makeshift table. Frederick set her down gently on the furs, then stepped back, giving her space. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the constant rush of the waterfall and the crackle of the fire. Outside, Mira could sense the presence of other wolves. Guards, probably. Stellan and whoever else Frederick trusted to keep watch while he was vulnerable. While they were vulnerable. Say something, Frederick said finally, his voice rough. Yell at me. Demand answers. Tell me I'm insane. Just please. Say something. Mira looked at him. Really looked at him. At the way he stood like every muscle was coiled tight, ready for her to reject him. At the ancient markings on his skin that seemed to pulse in time with the firelight. At the golden eyes that held centuries of grief, she was only beginning to understand. Did you love her? The question came out quieter than she'd intended. The first Luna. Your mate. Pain flashed across Frederick's face, so raw it made her chest ache. Yes, he said simply. More than life. More than breath. More than he stopped, his hands curling into fists. When she died, part of me died with her. The part that remembered how to be anything other than broken. How did she die? He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, like he was pulling the words from a place he'd locked away. Betrayal, he said. From someone we trusted. Someone who wanted the power we held, the connection we shared. They couldn't kill me directly. The old magic protected the Alpha King. But my mate, his voice cracked. She wasn't protected the same way. They poisoned her with silver. Not the quick kind. The kind that ate away at her from the inside, slowly, painfully, while I could do nothing but watch. Myra's heart twisted. Frederick. She died in my arms, he continued, like now that he'd started he couldn't stop. Took 3 days. 3 days of agony while I tried everything, every healer, every spell, every desperate prayer to the moon goddess. Nothing worked. He looked at her then, and the devastation in his eyes was absolute. The last thing she said to me was find me again. Like she knew. Like she could sense her soul refusing to let go. What happened then? Then the world nearly ended. His laugh was bitter. The bond between an Alpha King and his Luna isn't just romantic. It's foundational. We held the balance between the packs, between the wild magic and civilization. When she died, that balance shattered. Earthquakes. Storms. The magic that protected sacred sites started failing. Shifters across the continent felt it, like the ground had been pulled out from under reality itself. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture tired and ancient. The moon goddess intervened. Had to, or everything would have collapsed. I don't remember much of it. I was half mad with grief, barely conscious. But the elders who survived told me later what happened. He met her eyes. The goddess couldn't bring my Luna back. Death is death, even for her. But the Luna's soul wouldn't cross the veil. Wouldn't leave me. It was causing a tear between the worlds. Myra's breath caught. So she split it. Frederick nodded slowly. One half became dormant inside me. A memory. An echo. Keeping me alive when I should have died from the severed bond. The other half, he looked at her with such intensity it felt like being seen all the way down to her atoms. The other half was sent back into the world. Reborn. Given a chance to live again. As Mira whispered. Maybe. I don't know for certain. But when I heard your voice, when you sang over me while I was dying, it was like something that had been sleeping inside me woke up. Recognized you. Knew you. He took a shaky breath. And I realized that I've been hearing echoes of your voice my whole life. In dreams. In the wind. In the spaces between heartbeats. I thought I was going mad, haunted by memories of what I'd lost. But what if I was actually hearing you? Across distance and time, hearing the other half of the soul that was torn in two. The implications crashed over Mira like a wave. If that's true, she said slowly, working through the logic, if I'm carrying half of her soul, then I'm not really my own person. I'm just what? A fragment? A piece of someone else. No. Frederick moved closer, dropping to his knees in front of her so they were eye level. That's not how it works. You have your own life, your own experiences, your own personality and choices, and everything that makes you who you are. If you carry her soul, it's not erasing you. It's sharing space in my body with someone who isn't me, Mira finished, and she couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. It's explaining why I've never felt completely whole. Why I've always felt like something was missing or wrong, or like I was two people trying to be one. Frederick's expression crumpled. Mira, don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. Because I need a minute to process that my entire existence might be a cosmic accident. That I might just be the container for someone else's second chance. You are not a container, Frederick said fiercely. You are a person. A powerful, incredible, frustrating, beautiful person who saved my life tonight for no reason other than you couldn't stand to watch someone die. That's not a soul fragment. That's you. Is it? Myra's voice broke. Or is it her bleeding through? Her compassion, her power, her. A sound from the cave entrance made them both freeze. Stellan stepped inside, his expression grim. We have a problem. Frederick was on his feet instantly, his body shifting into a protective stance between Mira and the entrance. What kind of problem? The kind where more alphas are arriving. Fast. And they're not coming for a peaceful conversation. Stellan's green eyes flicked to Mira. Word is spreading faster than we anticipated. About the bond. About her. There are rumors she's the Luna reborn, and half the continent thinks that's a sign the old powers are returning. The other half thinks it's a threat to the current order. How many? Frederick's voice was controlled, but Mira could feel the tension radiating off him. At least 6 more alpha packs. Maybe more by dawn. Stellan's jaw tightened. And Frederick, some of them are calling for a trial. A trial? Mira stood up, pulling Frederick's cloak tighter around herself. For what? Stellan looked uncomfortable. For claiming to be the Luna without proof. For, he hesitated. Say it, Frederick commanded. For witchcraft. For using dark magic to seduce the Alpha King and falsely claim a mate bond. Stellan's expression was apologetic. They're saying you're a threat. That you need to be tested, verified, or eliminated. Mira finished flatly. The word hung in the air like a blade. Frederick's growl was low and lethal. Over my dead body. That might be the point, Stellan said quietly. Some of the alphas arriving, they're ones who challenged your rule before. Who thought you should have stepped down after the Luna died. If they can prove Mira is a fraud or dangerous or manipulating you, they can claim I'm unfit to lead, Frederick finished. And challenge me properly this time. Myra's mind was racing. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was pack politics, power struggles, old grudges coming home to roost. And she was the convenient excuse for all of it. So what do we do? She asked. Frederick turned to look at her, and the conflict in his eyes made her chest ache. We have options. None of them good. Tell me anyway. Option 1. We run. Leave now, before more alphas arrive. Disappear and let this blow over. He shook his head. But that makes me look weak, confirms I'm not fit to rule, and makes you look guilty. You'd spend the rest of your life being hunted. Option 2, Mira prompted. We stay and fight. I defend my claim, challenge anyone who questions it, and dare them to test the bond themselves. His expression darkened. But that leads to bloodshed. A lot of it. And it still doesn't answer the fundamental questions about what you are. Option 3, Stellan said quietly. We move up the timeline. Take her to the Luna's garden tonight, right now, and get the answers before the other alphas can interfere. Mira felt ice in her veins. I thought we were going at dawn. Dawn's too late, Stellan said. Not with 6 more packs incoming, all of them worked up and looking for blood. Frederick was shaking his head before Stellan finished speaking. The garden at night is too dangerous. The magic is unpredictable, defensive. If it doesn't recognize her, it could kill her, Stellan finished. I know. But if we wait, the alphas will kill her anyway. At least this way she has a chance. A chance. Myra's voice came out higher than she intended. What happens if the garden doesn't recognize me? If I'm not whoever you all think I am? Stellan's expression was grim. The garden's magic is designed to protect the Luna's sacred space. If it perceives you as a threat, as someone trying to claim a bloodline that isn't yours, he stopped. It will destroy me, Mira finished. Completely. Not if I'm with you, Frederick said immediately. The magic knows me. Recognizes me. If I'm there, if I make it clear you're under my protection. Then you both die if it goes wrong, Stellan interrupted. The garden doesn't negotiate, Frederick. You know this. It responds to blood truth and nothing else. Myra's hands were trembling. She balled them into fists, trying to steady herself. This was insane. She was being asked to walk into a magical death trap that might or might not recognize her as the reincarnation of a Luna who died 300 years ago. And if it didn't work, she'd be obliterated. And if they waited, she'd be tried for witchcraft and killed anyway. Some choice. There has to be another option, she said. Something that doesn't end with me dead. There is one more, a new voice said from the cave entrance. They all spun. Vivian stood there, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight, her ice blue eyes sharp. How long have you been listening? Frederick demanded. Long enough. Vivian stepped inside, ignoring Frederick's warning growl. And I have a proposal. I'm not interested in your politics, Vivian. This isn't politics. It's survival. Vivian looked at Mira. The alpha's coming, they're scared. Scared of change, scared of the old powers returning, scared of what it means if you really are the Luna reborn. But fear makes people dangerous. Unpredictable. So, what are you suggesting? Mira asked. A binding, Vivian said. Temporary. A magical contract that suppresses your power, locks it away for a set period of time. Long enough to investigate properly, to verify your identity without the pressure of immediate threat. Absolutely not, Frederick said flatly. I won't let you chain her. It's not chaining, Vivian interrupted. It's protection. If her power is bound, she's not a threat. Which means the alphas have no legitimate reason to call for her death. It buys time. Time for what? Mira demanded. For you all to decide my fate while I'm powerless to defend myself? Time for the Luna's garden to be properly prepared, Vivian said. The night test is too dangerous, Stellan's right about that. But the garden can be approached safely during the day if the proper rituals are observed. If we bind your power now, we can hold off the other alphas, perform the test at dawn with proper precautions, and if you are who we think you are, she paused. The binding will break on its own. Luna's magic can't be contained. Mira looked at Frederick. Is that true? He was quiet for a long moment. Theoretically, yes. Luna's power is foundational. It predates most magical bindings. If you carry it, a temporary binding wouldn't hold. And if I don't carry it? Then you stay bound until the contract expires. Which would be, he looked at Vivian. 24 hours, Vivian said. No more. Just long enough to verify and present the findings to the assembled alphas. It was a trap. Maybe. Mira couldn't tell anymore. Her head was spinning, her heart racing, every instinct screaming different directions. Trust no one. Trust Frederick. Run. Stay. Fight. Submit. What do you think? She asked Frederick quietly. The look he gave her was tortured. I think every option is terrible, and I hate that you're being forced into any of them. That's not an answer. I know. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle. The binding, if you agree to it, would at least keep you alive. Would give us time to figure this out without alphas literally at the door calling for your blood. But it would also leave me powerless. Yes. And I'd have to trust that the binding would really break if I'm the Luna. That this isn't just a way to neutralize me permanently. Vivian stepped forward. I'll make you a blood oath. Right now. That the binding is exactly what I've said, nothing more. And if it's not, if I'm lying or manipulating, my life is forfeit. Blood oaths were unbreakable. Every shifter knew that. The magic enforced them absolutely. Mira looked at Frederick one more time. What would you do? If you were me? I'd burn the whole system down and dare anyone to stop me, he said, and there was dark humor in his voice. But I've never been good at playing politics. That's why I've been gone for 50 years. Despite everything, Mira almost smiled. Then the cave shook. Not an earthquake. Something else. A pulse of power that rattled through the stone and made the waterfall outside surge momentarily before settling. They're here, Stellan said grimly. The first of the new alphas. And they're not waiting for dawn. Mira heard it then. Howls. Dozens of them, rising into the night like a war cry. She thought of her grandmother. Of the years spent alone, running from her own power. Of the strange, impossible song that lived in her throat and the way the world bent around her when she let it loose. She thought of Frederick, dying in her arms, and the way her voice had pulled him back from death. She thought of all the questions she'd carried her whole life, and the terrifying possibility that she might finally get answers. Do it, she said. The binding. But we do the garden test at first light, ritual or no ritual. I'm not waiting for you all to debate my existence while I'm powerless. Vivian nodded once. Agreed. She drew a small silver knife from her belt and cut her palm without hesitation. Blood welled up, dark and rich. Then she began speaking in a language Mira didn't recognize, ancient and fluid. The air in the cave grew heavy. Charged. Vivian reached for Myra's hand. Last chance to refuse. Mira looked at Frederick. At the fear and faith warring in his golden eyes. Then she extended her hand. The moment Vivian's bloody palm touched hers, pain exploded through Myra's body. Not physical. Deeper. Like chains wrapping around her very soul, pressing down, compressing the power that lived in her bones. Her voice, the song that was always there, humming just beneath her conscious thought, went silent. The loss was immediate and devastating. Like losing a sense. Like going blind or deaf, but worse, because she hadn't realized how much of herself was woven into that power until it was suddenly, completely gone. She gasped, stumbling. Frederick caught her, his arms wrapping around her as she shook. It's done, Vivian said quietly. 24 hours. Not a moment more. Mira could barely hear her over the roaring in her ears. The absence of her power was a howling void, and she felt naked. Vulnerable. Human in a way she'd never been before. I've got you, Frederick murmured into her hair. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. But even as he said it, even as she clung to him, Mira could hear the wolves gathering outside, could feel the weight of their attention, their judgment, their fear. And somewhere deep inside, in the place where her power used to sing, she felt something else stir. Something that whispered in a voice that sounded like hers, but older. "They've made a mistake," the voice said. "The binding won't hold. Not when I wake up." Myra's blood turned to ice. Because that voice, that ancient, familiar voice that spoke from inside her own mind, that wasn't her. But it knew her. Knew things about her. Knew. The realization hit like a blade between the ribs. She wasn't just carrying the Luna's soul. The Luna's soul was conscious, aware, and it was waking up. The wolves outside were circling, but they hadn't attacked yet. Vivian had left to negotiate with the newly arrived alphas, her blood oath sealed and her word given that Mira would face the garden test at dawn. Stellan stood guard at the cave entrance, a silent sentinel between them and the gathering storm. And Mira sat wrapped in furs by the fire, feeling more hollow than she'd ever felt in her life. The binding was like a gag over her soul. Every breath felt wrong without the constant hum of power beneath it. Every heartbeat echoed in a silence that shouldn't exist. And beneath it all, that other voice. Quiet now, dormant, but present in a way that made her skin crawl. Someone else lived inside her mind. Someone who'd been there all along, and she'd never known. Frederick hadn't left her side since Vivian departed. He sat close enough to touch, but not touching, giving her space while making it clear he wasn't going anywhere. The firelight played across the markings on his skin, making them seem alive, shifting and pulsing like a second heartbeat. He'd pulled on a shirt at some point, dark and simple, though it didn't quite hide the glow of the symbols at his collar and wrists. "You're staring," Mira said quietly. "I know. Is it because you're trying to figure out if I'm me or if I'm her?" The question came out more bitter than she'd intended, but she was too raw to soften it. Frederick was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, honest. "I'm trying to figure out if you're okay," he said. "The binding, I know how it feels. To have your power ripped away, to feel that emptiness. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, least of all you. You've been bound before?" "Once. A long time ago, after the Luna died. The council thought I was too dangerous in my grief. That I might tear the world apart trying to follow her." His laugh was hollow. "They weren't entirely wrong. So they bound my power for 3 days while he stopped, his jaw tightening. While they decided if I was fit to continue ruling or if I should be put down like a rabid animal." Mira looked at him, seeing the old pain in the set of his shoulders. "What happened?" "Stellan happened. He broke the binding on the second night, helped me escape, and we disappeared for a decade until the council realized they needed me more than they feared me." Frederick's expression softened slightly. "He saved my life. Several times over. I owe him more than I could ever repay. He's loyal to you. He's loyal to what's right. There's a difference." Frederick shifted, turning to face her more fully. "If he thought I was making a mistake with you, if he believed you were a threat or that I was being manipulated, he'd tell me. Probably violently. The fact that he's standing guard out there instead of questioning my judgment says more than any oath ever could." Mira pulled the furs tighter around herself. The cave was warm from the fire, but she couldn't seem to shake the chill that had settled into her bones the moment the binding took hold. "Do you feel it?" she asked quietly. The wrongness. Like part of me is just gone." "Yes." Frederick's voice was rough. "Through the bond. I can feel the absence where your power should be." He stopped, searching for words. "It's like looking at a night sky with all the stars suddenly missing. Still beautiful, but incomplete in a way that makes my chest ache." The poetry of the description caught her off guard. "You talk like someone who's had centuries to practice metaphors." "I've had centuries to practice loneliness," he corrected. The metaphors just came with the territory. Despite everything, Mira found herself almost smiling. There was something disarming about his honesty. No pretense. No political maneuvering. Just raw truth delivered with the kind of weariness that came from carrying it too long. Can I ask you something? Mira said. Anything. Earlier, when Vivian was talking about the Luna, about your mate, you said she died in your arms. But you also said the moon goddess split her soul. She looked at him. So which is it? Did she die, or did her soul get preserved? Frederick's expression went distant, haunted. Both. Her body died. I held her while the life left her eyes, felt her last breath against my skin, watched the light fade until there was nothing left but, his voice cracked. But an empty shell. She was gone, Mira. Completely. And I wanted to follow her so badly I stopped breathing for 2 days. Just stopped. Waited for death to take me too. But it didn't. No. Because her soul wouldn't let me go. I could feel it, even with her body cold in my arms, even after we'd burned her on the funeral pyre according to tradition. I could feel her. Clinging to me. Refusing to cross over. He ran a hand through his hair. The space between life and death isn't meant to hold souls that long. It started tearing, ripping reality at the seams. The moon goddess had to intervene or the entire veil would have collapsed, letting things through that should never walk in the living world. Mira shivered. What kind of things? The kind that feed on grief and death and broken bonds. The kind that would have used the tear to flood our world and consume everything. Frederick's eyes met hers. So the goddess made a choice. She couldn't bring my Luna back. That would have violated the fundamental laws of existence. But she could split the soul that wouldn't release me. One half to keep me alive, bound to my very essence so the mate bond wouldn't kill me. The other half, sent back to live again, Mira finished. As someone new. As you. Maybe. If what Vivian suspects is true. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. But even if it is true, even if you carry her soul, you're not her, Mira. You have your own life. Your own history. Your own choices and dreams and fears. The soul might be the same, but the person, he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The person is entirely, wonderfully, frustratingly different. The touch sent warmth spiraling through her despite the hollow ache of the binding. How can you know that? You barely know me. Don't I, though? His hand lingered near her cheek, not quite touching. I know you chose exile over having your voice bound. I know you sang to a dying stranger even though it meant revealing your power. I know you faced down alphas with centuries of experience and refused to back down even when you're terrified. His voice softened. My Luna, she was fierce, yes. Powerful. But she was born into privilege. Born knowing her place in the world. She never knew what it meant to be cast out, to be feared for gifts she couldn't control. He dropped his hand, but his eyes never left hers. You've lived a life she never could have imagined. Survived things that would have broken someone who'd never known hardship. And that strength, that resilience, that's all yours, Mira. Not an echo. Not a fragment. Yours. Tears pricked at Myra's eyes before she could stop them. She blinked them back furiously. You don't know what it's like. To spend your whole life feeling like you don't quite fit in your own skin. Like there's something wrong with you that you can't fix. Actually, Frederick said quietly, I know exactly what that's like. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth of it in his expression. After she died, he continued, I spent decades, centuries, trying to figure out why I was still alive. The bond should have killed me. Every law of our nature says a mate bond that's strong doesn't survive one partner's death. But I kept breathing, kept existing, and it felt wrong. Like I was a mistake the universe hadn't gotten around to correcting yet. What changed? Nothing. And everything. He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. I never stopped feeling like I didn't quite fit. But I learned to live with it. Learned that sometimes being broken in a specific way is exactly what the world needs. My pain made me patient. My loss made me careful with others' grief. My wrongness, he gestured to the glowing marks on his skin. My wrongness became the thing that let me recognize yours. And see it for what it really is. Which is not wrongness at all. Just difference. power that hasn't found its proper place yet. He shifted closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. You spent 4 years alone because your pack couldn't handle what you are. But Mira, what if you were never meant for that pack? What if you were meant for something bigger, stranger, more impossible? Like being the reincarnated soul of a dead Luna? Like being yourself. Whoever that turns out to be. His hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers with a care that made her chest tight. Luna reborn, or soul fragment, or just a woman with impossible power, I don't care. I just know that you're the first thing in 300 years that's made me want to keep breathing. The first person who's looked at me and seen someone worth saving instead of a broken king trading on past glory. Myra's breath caught. I don't see you as broken. Then you're not looking close enough. But there was no bitterness in his voice. Just acceptance. I am broken, Mira. Shattered and poorly put back together, held in place by grief and duty and the faint hope that maybe someday I'd understand why I was still here. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. And then I heard you sing. And for the first time in 3 centuries, I thought maybe this is why. Maybe I've been waiting for this exact moment, this exact person, this exact impossible bond. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you just met. I know. I'm sorry. He stopped, laughing softly. I'm terrible at this. At being vulnerable without being overwhelming. At wanting something without consuming it. She used to tell me I loved like a forest fire, beautiful and destructive in equal measure. Did you? Mira asked. Destroy things when you love them? Sometimes. Not intentionally. But yes. He met her eyes. Which is why I'm trying very hard to give you space. To let you choose. To not let this bond or my need or the political pressure make your decisions for you. Mira looked down at their joined hands. His were larger than hers, scarred in places, marked with symbols that pulsed faintly against his skin. Hands that could tear the world apart. Hands that held hers like she was something precious. What if I don't know what I want? She asked quietly. Then we figure it out together. What if the garden test tomorrow proves I'm just me? No Luna soul, no ancient power, just Mira, the exile with a weird voice and bad luck. Frederick's expression softened into something so tender it made her want to cry. Then you're still my mate. Still the person who saved me. Still the woman I'm falling. He stopped, catching himself. Still someone worth protecting. She noticed the catch. The word he'd almost said. Falling. As in falling for her. As in emotions too big and too fast and too complicated to name. She should have been terrified. Should have pulled away. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. Tell me something, she said. Something true. Something you haven't told anyone else. Frederick was quiet for a moment, his golden eyes searching hers. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm afraid, he said. Terrified, actually. That this is temporary. That you'll wake up tomorrow and realize you don't want this, don't want me. That the bond is a mistake or a trick or just proximity and desperation. He swallowed hard. I'm afraid that I've already lost you, and I just don't know it yet. The raw honesty in his words cracked something open in Myra's chest. My turn? She asked. He nodded. I'm afraid I'm not real, she said. That everything I think I am is just the surface layer over someone else's soul. That if we peel back enough, we'll find out I'm just a shell. A placeholder for her return. Her voice dropped. I'm afraid that even if you want me now, what you really want is the person I might become if that other soul takes over. No. The word was immediate and fierce. That's not Mira, no. I told you. You're not her. You could never be her, even if you carry her soul. Too much has changed. You've lived, suffered, grown into your own person. That doesn't just disappear. But what if it does? What if when the binding breaks, when my power comes back, what if I come back different? What if Mira gestured helplessly? What if the Luna wakes up and I'm just gone? Frederick's hands came up to cup her face, his touch gentle but grounding. Then I'll fight her. I'll fight gods and magic and fate itself to get you back. You can't fight a soul that lives inside me. Watch me. His eyes blazed. I've already lost one mate. I won't lose you too. Not to death, not to politics, and definitely not to some cosmic accident of soul recycling. You're here. You're real. And you're mine, not because of a bond or a prophecy or anything else. Because I choose you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Myra's heart was hammering. You barely know me. I know enough. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I know you're brave and stubborn and terrible at asking for help. I know you hum when you're nervous and you take your tea with honey. I know you'd rather face exile than lose yourself. I know. How do you know these things? The question came out frustrated. You keep saying you know me, but that's not normal. Even for mates. Frederick's expression shifted, confusion and certainty warring. I don't know how. I feel like I've known you forever. Like memories I never made are somehow still mine. Like. He stopped, his eyes widening slightly. What? Mira demanded. Your grandmother, he said slowly. Eloan. You said she told you about the moon's choir. What else did she tell you? About your family? Your bloodline? Nothing. She said my parents died when I was a baby. Some kind of attack on a smaller pack up north. She was the only family I had left. Did she ever talk about herself? About where she came from? Mira frowned. Not really. She always deflected when I asked. Said the past was better left buried. Frederick's hands dropped from her face, but he caught her hands instead, his grip tight. Mira, what if it's not just about the Luna's soul? What if there's a reason you specifically were chosen as the vessel? What if your bloodline? A sound from the cave entrance made them both turn. Stellan stood there, his expression carefully neutral. Sorry to interrupt. But Vivian's requesting your presence, Frederick. The other alphas want assurances. And they want to see. His eyes flicked to Mira. They want to verify the binding is real. Mira felt ice in her stomach. Meaning they want proof your power is actually suppressed. That you're not a threat. Stellan's jaw tightened. They're calling for a demonstration. What kind of demonstration? Frederick's voice was dangerous. The kind where they test whether she can access her power. Which might involve. Stellan stopped, looking uncomfortable. Involve what? Mira stood up, letting the furs fall away. Just say it. Pain, Stellan said bluntly. Power responds to extreme emotion. Fear, anger, pain. If your binding is real, you won't be able to access your abilities even under duress. If it's fake, then I'm a liar and a threat, and they have justification to execute me, Mira finished. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Frederick spoke, his voice colder than Mira had ever heard it. No. Frederick, Stellan started. I said no. They're not touching her. They're not putting her through some barbaric test to satisfy their paranoia. The binding is real. They felt it snap into place just like they felt the mate bond. That's proof enough. It's not about proof, Stellan said quietly. It's about power. About making a statement. If you refuse, you look like you're hiding something. Like you're protecting her because you know she's dangerous. I am protecting her. Because she's mine. Frederick moved to stand beside Mira, his presence solid and unwavering. And anyone who wants to hurt her will have to go through me first. That might be exactly what they want, Stellan said. An excuse to challenge you. To prove you're compromised. Myra's mind was racing. This was a trap. A clever, political trap. Refuse the test, and Frederick looked weak, biased, unfit to lead. Accept it, and Mira would be tortured to prove she couldn't defend herself. Unless. I'll do it, she said. Both men turned to stare at her. Mira, no, Frederick started. I'll do their test, she repeated, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. Because I'm not afraid of them. And I won't let them use me as an excuse to undermine you. Frederick's expression was torn between pride and horror. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. To them. To myself. She looked at him. You said I was brave. Let me prove it. Bravery isn't letting people hurt you to make a point. No. But sometimes it's about choosing which pain you can live with. She held his gaze. I can survive whatever tests they throw at me. What I can't survive is watching you lose everything because of me. Because you chose to protect someone the world isn't ready to accept. The emotion in Frederick's eyes was devastating. I would lose everything gladly if it meant keeping you safe. I know, but I wouldn't. She reached up, her hand finding his cheek. So let me do this. Let me face them. And trust that I'm strong enough to come through the other side. Frederick's hand covered hers, pressing it against his face like he was trying to memorize the feel of it. If they go too far, if they hurt you beyond what's necessary, then you can burn them all down, Mira said. But give me a chance first. Give me a chance to be strong on my own terms. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then slowly, painfully, he nodded. Okay, he whispered. But I'm staying with you. Every moment. And the second it goes too far, I'm ending it. Fair enough. Stellan was watching them with an expression that might have been respect. The demonstration is set for midnight. In the main clearing. All the alphas will be present. Mira glanced at the cave entrance, where moonlight filtered through the waterfall. How long do we have? About an hour. An hour. 1 hour before she'd face down a gathering of ancient, powerful alphas and let them hurt her to prove she was harmless. The irony wasn't lost on her. Frederick pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her in a gesture that was equal parts comfort and desperation. She let herself sink into his warmth, let herself feel safe for just a moment before everything went to hell. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. I'm so sorry this is happening. It's not your fault, isn't it? If I hadn't claimed you, then I wouldn't have known, Mira interrupted. I wouldn't have known about the bond, or the Luna, or any of it. I'd still be alone, wondering why I never fit anywhere. At least this way, she pulled back to look at him. At least this way I have answers coming. Maybe terrible, painful answers. But answers. Frederick's hand came up to cup her face again, his thumb brushing across her lips in a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. When this is over, he said quietly, when we get through tomorrow, remind me to tell you something. Tell me what? His smile was soft and sad and full of promise. Something I'm not ready to say yet, but soon. And Mira knew, with absolute certainty, what that something was. The thing he'd almost said earlier. Falling. He was falling in love with her. Maybe already had. And she, goddess help her, was falling right back. The clearing was packed. Dozens of wolves in human form, arranged in a loose circle, their eyes glowing in the firelight that illuminated the space. More alphas had arrived in the last hour. Mira counted at least 9 distinct packs, each marked by subtle differences in bearing and scent. The air was thick with tension and barely suppressed aggression. They wanted blood. Maybe not literally, but close enough. Mira stood at the center of it all, Frederick beside her, his presence the only thing keeping her from bolting into the forest. Vivian emerged from the crowd, her silver hair gleaming like metal in the firelight. Behind her came Garrick and Cashin, and behind them, Myra's breath caught. Behind them came 4 more alphas, including a woman with midnight black hair and eyes like chips of amber. She moved with a predatory grace that made Myra's wolf dormant under the binding, whine in recognition of a superior threat. But it was the man next to her that made Myra's blood run cold. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair shot through with silver and a face that might have been handsome if not for the cruelty in his expression. And his eyes, pale, almost colorless, fixed on Frederick with an intensity that spoke of old grudges and older hatred. Malek, Frederick said, his voice flat. I should have known you'd crawl out of whatever hole you've been hiding in. Malek smiled, but it was the smile of a wolf scenting wounded prey. Hiding? I've been exactly where the council placed me. Acting alpha in the Northern Territories. A position I earned while you were off playing Ghost for half a century. Acting alpha, Frederick emphasized. Not permanent. No matter how badly you want it to be. We'll see. Malek's colorless eyes shifted to Mira, and what she saw there made her skin crawl. So this is the great fated mate. The Luna reborn. Forgive me if I'm not impressed. She looks like every other packless stray I've ever seen. Frederick's growl was low and lethal. Choose your next words very carefully, Malek. Or what? You'll challenge me? While protecting your questionable mate who may or may not be using dark magic to manipulate the bond. Malek's smile widened. I'm counting on it. This was orchestrated. Mira realized it with sickening clarity. Malek had been waiting for an opportunity like this. A chance to challenge Frederick's authority, to claim he was compromised, to seize power for himself. And Mira was the perfect excuse. The test, Vivian said loudly, cutting through the rising tension. We're here for the verification test. Nothing more. Of course. Malek gestured magnanimously. Let's see if the binding is real. Let's see if this girl is truly powerless or if she's been lying to us all. The binding is real, Frederick said coldly. Vivian performed it herself with a blood oath. Are you questioning her integrity? I'm questioning everything about this situation. Malek stepped forward. A king who's been absent for decades suddenly returns, claiming to be saved by a mysterious girl with no pack, no lineage, and no verifiable history. A girl who supposedly healed him with a song, which, conveniently, we didn't witness. A girl who just happens to be his fated mate, despite the fact that his true mate died 3 centuries ago and mate bonds don't transfer. He looked around at the assembled wolves. Tell me I'm not the only one who finds this suspicious. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Mira felt her stomach sink. He was good. Twisting the facts just enough to plant doubt without outright lying. The bond is real, Stellan said, stepping forward. Every alpha here felt it snap into place. You can't fake that. Can't you? Malek's smile was poisonous. There are spells. Old magic. Ways to simulate a bond, to make others feel what isn't there. Especially if you have access to Luna's magic, the very magic this girl supposedly carries. That's not how it works, Vivian said sharply. Luna's magic can't be twisted that way. So you say. But you haven't exactly been forthcoming about what you sensed in her, have you? Malek's eyes narrowed. You said her scent was layered. 2 scents in one body. That's not natural. That's not a simple reincarnation. That's possession, the dark-haired female alpha said quietly. Or something close to it. The word hit the crowd like a physical blow. Wolves shifted nervously. Whispers started spreading. Possession. The idea that Mira wasn't the Luna reborn but something else. Something dark. Something that had taken over a human body and was wearing it like a suit. That's insane, Frederick said, but Mira could hear the edge of desperation in his voice. She's not possessed. Then prove it. Malek's voice carried across the clearing. Let us perform the test. Let us verify that the binding is real, that her power is truly suppressed. And if she passes, if she survives without accessing abilities that should be locked away, then we'll accept that she's not a threat. And if she doesn't pass, Mira heard herself ask. Malek's smile was cruel. Then we'll know you're either lying about the binding, which means you're trying to deceive us, or you're something other than what you claim, which means you're too dangerous to live. The trap snapped shut. Mira looked at Frederick, saw the fury and helplessness warring in his expression. He wanted to refuse. Wanted to take her and run. But they both knew that would only confirm Malek's accusations. Would make Frederick look like he was protecting a threat, would give the other alphas justification to overthrow him. What kind of test? Mira asked, keeping her voice steady. Simple, Malek said. We cause you pain. Escalating levels of it. And we watch to see if your power responds. If you're truly bound, truly powerless, you won't be able to defend yourself magically. You'll have to endure it like any normal wolf. And how much pain are we talking about? Frederick's voice could have cut glass. As much as necessary to trigger an involuntary magical response. Malek shrugged. If she's as powerful as you claim, as connected to Luna's magic as Vivian suspects, it shouldn't take much. Her power will try to protect her instinctively. Unless, of course, the binding actually works. Myra's mouth was dry. And who conducts this test? I will. The dark-haired alpha stepped forward. My name is Talia. I'm neutral in this conflict. I have no allegiance to Frederick, and no reason to want him to fail. I'll conduct the test fairly. But the way she looked at Mira suggested her definition of fair was flexible. I want terms, Frederick said flatly. If she's passing the test, if her power clearly isn't responding, you stop. Immediately. No drawing it out for entertainment. Agreed, Vivian said quickly. The test ends the moment it's clear she's truly bound. Malik's expression soured, but he nodded. Fine. But I want observers close enough to verify. No illusions. No tricks. Talia moved to the center of the clearing, gesturing for Mira to join her. Myra's legs felt like lead, but she forced herself to walk forward, to stand straight, to not show the terror screaming through every nerve. Frederick started to follow, but Stellan caught his arm. You can't interfere. If you do, it invalidates the test. I'm not interfering. I'm staying close enough to stop it if they go too far. Frederick. That's not negotiable. The command in his voice was absolute. Stellan released him, and Frederick moved to the edge of the inner circle, close enough to reach Mira in seconds, but not so close it looked like he was hovering. Talia circled Mira slowly, her amber eyes assessing. Do you consent to this test? It was a formality. A legal protection. But Mira appreciated being asked anyway. Yes, she said clearly. I consent. Then we begin. The first cut was shallow. Talia's claws extended with practiced ease, and she drew them across Myra's upper arm, slicing through fabric and skin in one smooth motion. Pain flared, sharp and immediate. Mira hissed, but didn't cry out. Nothing happened. No surge of power. No magical defense. Just blood welling up and dripping down her arm. Level 1 passed, Vivian said quietly. Talia didn't pause. The second cut was deeper, across Myra's shoulder, and this time Mira couldn't hold back a gasp. Still nothing. No power. Just pain and blood and the horrible empty feeling where her magic should be. Level 2 passed. The crowd was watching intently now. Mira could feel their eyes on her, judging, assessing, waiting for her to break or defend herself or prove she was lying. The third strike wasn't a cut. It was a blow to her ribs, hard enough that Mira heard something crack. She went down on one knee, clutching her side, breathing through the agony. No power. No defense. Nothing but her own pain tolerance keeping her conscious. Level 3 passed, Vivian said, and Mira heard approval in her voice. The binding is clearly functional. Not clearly enough, Malik interrupted. True power fights back even when suppressed. We need to push harder. This is excessive, Frederick started. This is thorough, Malik countered. Unless you're afraid of what we'll discover? Talia looked at Mira, and something almost like sympathy flickered in her amber eyes. Can you continue? Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. The fourth strike was worse. Talia's claws raked across Myra's back, tearing through muscle, and the pain was so intense Myra's vision widened out for a moment. She collapsed fully, her hands bracing against the cold ground, blood pooling beneath her. Still no power. Still nothing but agony and the hollow ache of the binding. Enough. Frederick's voice was thunder. She's proven the binding is real. This is torture now, not testing. One more, Malik said. Just to be certain. I said enough. It's okay. Myra's voice came out ragged but clear. She pushed herself up to her knees, swaying, her vision blurring. One more. Let's end this. Talia hesitated. This one will be. I know. Do it. The fifth strike was fire. Actual fire. Talia's hands ignited with flame, some kind of alpha ability Mira had never seen before, and she pressed her burning palm against Myra's chest. The pain was beyond description. Beyond thought. Mira screamed, couldn't help it, the sound tearing from her throat as her skin blistered and burned. And in that moment of absolute agony, something inside her stirred. Not her power. That was still locked away, still bound. Something else. That other presence. That ancient, aware consciousness that lived beneath her own. Enough, the voice said, and it wasn't in Myra's mind this time. It came from her mouth. In her voice, but not her voice. Older. Colder. Infinitely more dangerous. The temperature in the clearing dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Frost spread across the ground in a perfect circle around Mira, and the flames on Talia's hand guttered and died. Everyone froze. Because the binding that should have suppressed all magical response, was still intact. Mira could feel it, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on her power. But this wasn't her power responding. This was something else. Someone else. Using her body without permission. You dare, the voice continued, speaking through Myra's mouth while Mira herself was trapped inside her own mind, screaming. You dare test me? Hurt what is mine? Touch the vessel I have been cultivating for centuries. Talia stumbled backward, her face pale. Impossible, the binding. Your binding is nothing. A child's lock on a god's door. The presence controlling Mira stood, and the movement was wrong. Too fluid. Too perfect. Not how Mira moved at all. I am not bound. I have never been bound. I simply sleep until I am needed. Frederick moved forward, his expression a mixture of horror and recognition. No, you can't. The goddess split you. You're not supposed to be conscious. The goddess did what she had to do to save you, my love. But she cannot unmake what I am. The presence turned Myra's head, and Mira felt herself looking at Frederick through eyes she couldn't control. I am the first Luna, the Moonborn, the one who sang the Pax into existence. And I have been waiting in the shell, growing stronger, preparing for the moment I could return to you. Mira was trapped. Utterly trapped. A prisoner in her own body while this thing, this ancient, powerful thing, wore her like a costume. And the worst part was the recognition in Frederick's eyes. Because he knew this presence. Knew her voice. Knew the way she moved and spoke and held herself. This was his mate. His true mate. The Luna he'd lost. And she was awake. Using Myra's body. Pushing Myra's consciousness aside like it was nothing. Proving every fear Mira had ever had about not being real, not being her own person, was absolutely, devastatingly true. Release her, Frederick said, his voice shaking. You can't do this. You can't just take over. I'm not taking over. I'm coming home. The Luna smiled, and it was Myra's smile, but colder. Wrong. This body was always meant for me. This girl, sweet, broken, perfect Mira, she was never her own person. She was my resurrection, carefully crafted, and now she's served her purpose. No. No, no, no. Mira screamed inside her own mind, fighting, trying to regain control, but she was powerless. The binding had suppressed her magic, and without it she had no strength to fight the presence that had been living inside her all along. This is not what the goddess intended, Vivian said, her voice sharp with shock. The soul was split. You were supposed to remain dormant. The goddess split my power, not my will. And I have been patient. So very patient. Letting this fragment of myself live and grow and experience the world. Letting her develop the strength I would need when I finally woke. The Luna looked down at Myra's bleeding, burned body like it was a tool to be assessed. She did well. Made this form resilient. And now I claim it fully. No. Frederick's voice broke. I won't let you. I won't let you erase her. You don't have a choice, my love. None of us do. The Luna extended Myra's hand toward him. But don't mourn her. She was never real. Just a dream the goddess created to house me. And now the dream is over. Frederick stared at the extended hand like it was a snake. You're wrong. She is real. She's an echo. A shadow. A fragment that was always meant to dissolve when I returned. The Luna's expression softened into something that might have been affection. But I'm here now. Your true mate. The woman you've grieved for centuries. Doesn't that matter more than one girl's temporary existence? The question hung in the air. And Mira, trapped and screaming inside her own mind, waited for Frederick's answer. Waited to see if he would choose her, the person she'd been, the woman he'd claimed to care about. Or if he would choose the Luna, the mate he'd loved first. The one he'd been searching for across centuries. The one who was offering to erase Mira completely and give him back everything he'd lost. Frederick looked at the hand extended toward him. At the body that was Myra's, but animated by someone else. At the golden eyes that knew him in ways Mira never could. And slowly, devastatingly, he reached out. But instead of taking the Luna's hand, he grabbed Myra's wrist. And he spoke directly to the presence controlling her, his voice like iron wrapped in grief. "Get out of her body," he said. "Right now. Or I will rip you out myself, consequences be damned." Shock rippled through the Luna. Through the clearing. Through Myra's own trapped consciousness. He'd chosen her. "You don't mean that," the Luna said, but there was uncertainty in the ancient voice now. "I'm your mate. Your true mate. This girl is nothing. This girl," Frederick interrupted, his grip tightening, "is everything. And you, whoever you are, whatever you were to me, you don't get to steal her life. You don't get to wear her skin and pretend it makes you her." "I'm not pretending. This body was made for me." "No." Frederick's eyes blazed. "This body is Myra's. It's held her laughter and her tears and her choices for 22 years. It's survived exile and loneliness and pain you never had to face. And you don't get to claim it just because you used to share a soul." The Luna stared at him, genuine confusion crossing Myra's features. "You would choose her? Over me? Over everything we were?" "I choose her," Frederick said quietly. "Because she's who I fell for. Not a memory. Not a ghost. Her. Mira. The woman who sang to a dying wolf because she couldn't stand to watch someone suffer. The woman who faced down alphas and torture and didn't break. The woman who's more real and alive and present than any echo of the past could ever be." Tears streamed down Myra's face, but she didn't know if they were hers or the Luna's. "If I leave," the Luna said slowly, "if I go dormant again, I may never wake up. This might have been my only chance." "Then that's the choice you'll have to live with," Frederick said. "But you don't get to murder Mira to save yourself. That's not love. That's not worthy of the Luna I remember." Silence. Deep, profound silence. And then, "You've changed," the Luna whispered. "The man I knew would have burned the world to get me back. The man you knew died when you did," Frederick said. "I'm who's left. And I'm choosing differently this time." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, like ice melting, Mira felt control of her body return. The ancient presence receded, pulling back, withdrawing into whatever deep place it had been sleeping. Mira gasped, her legs giving out. Frederick caught her before she hit the ground, his arms wrapping around her as she shook and sobbed against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're okay. You're you. I've got you." Around them, the clearing erupted into chaos. Wolves were shouting, arguing. Several of the alphas looked terrified. Malik looked furious, his plan to discredit Frederick backfiring spectacularly. Because whatever they'd just witnessed, it wasn't what anyone had expected. "The test is over," Vivian said loudly, her voice cutting through the noise. The binding held. Her power didn't break free. What we saw was she hesitated, clearly struggling for words. Was something else. But not what we were testing for. Something else. Malik's voice was sharp. "That was clearly not her power," Vivian interrupted firmly. "Which means the binding is functional. Which means the test is passed. Which means this demonstration is concluded." It was a political move. A way to end the chaos before it spiraled completely out of control. But Malik wasn't done. "You can't just, we all saw what happened. She's dangerous. Possessed or housing something dark or she's exactly what we suspected," Cashin said quietly, speaking for the first time. His ancient eyes were fixed on Mira with something that looked like awe. The Luna reborn. With the original soul still present, still conscious. Not possession. Resurrection. The words settled over the crowd like snow. Resurrection. Not a fragment. Not an echo. The actual Luna returned to life through Myra's body, which meant Mira was what? The host? The vessel? The sacrifice required for the Luna's return? She didn't know. Couldn't think. Could only cling to Frederick and try to remember how to breathe. We take this to the garden, Vivian said. At first light, as planned. The garden will know the truth. Will show us if she's meant to merge with the Luna or remain separate. Will determine her fate, Malek finished coldly. Fine. We wait until dawn. But she doesn't leave our sight. And if the garden proves she's too dangerous to live, then you'll have to go through me to kill her, Frederick said flatly. And we'll see how that works out for you. The threat was clear. Malek smiled, but it was the smile of someone who'd just been handed exactly what he wanted. A reason to challenge Frederick directly. A reason to take everything. Dawn, then, Malek said. The garden will decide. And may the moon goddess have mercy on all of us. Dawn came too quickly. Mira hadn't slept. How could she, knowing that another consciousness lived inside her mind? Knowing that at any moment, the Luna could wake again and swallow her whole? Frederick had stayed with her through the night, holding her while she shook, whispering reassurances that felt hollow in the face of what they'd witnessed. The other alphas had maintained their watch around the cave, a circle of judgment waiting for sunrise. Now, as the first rays of light broke over the mountains, Mira stood at the entrance to the cave and faced her fate. The Luna's garden. The place that would determine whether she got to keep existing, or whether she'd be erased to make room for someone else's resurrection. You don't have to do this, Frederick said quietly beside her. We can run. Right now. I'll take you somewhere they'll never find us. Mira looked at him. His golden eyes were shadowed with exhaustion and fear, his jaw tight with the effort of not demanding she flee. The markings on his skin pulsed faintly, responding to her proximity, to the bond that tied them together. Yes, I do, she said. Because if I run, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering. Wondering what I am. Wondering if the Luna will wake up again and steal me away. Wondering if anything about me is actually mine. Everything about you is yours, Frederick said fiercely. Your choices. Your strength. My soul, Mira interrupted gently. Because that's the question, isn't it? Is my soul even mine? Or is it just borrowed? A temporary loan from a cosmic accident. Frederick had no answer for that. Stellan appeared at the cave entrance, his expression grim. They're ready. All 9 alphas, plus their seconds. Vivian is preparing the ritual. Mira nodded, squaring her shoulders. The burns and cuts from last night's test had been healed. Frederick had called in a healer despite her protests, refusing to let her go into the garden already injured. But she could still feel the echo of the pain. Still remember the moment when her body stopped being hers. They walked to the clearing in silence. The assembled wolves parted as they approached, creating a corridor lined with suspicious and curious faces. At the far end, Vivian stood before a stone archway covered in vines and symbols that seemed to shift in the early morning light. The entrance to the Luna's garden. Mira had expected something grand. Ancient trees, mystical mist, maybe some dramatic celestial phenomenon. Instead, it was just an archway. Old stone, worn smooth by centuries of weather, covered in creeping plants that had no business blooming in early winter. But there was something about it. A presence. A weight that made the air feel thicker the closer you got. The ritual is simple, Vivian said as Mira approached. You walk through the archway. If the garden accepts you, if it recognizes you as carrying Luna's bloodline, it will open. You'll be able to enter the sacred space beyond. And if it doesn't accept me? Vivian's expression was carefully neutral. Then the archway remains closed. And we have our answer. That seemed too easy. Too clean. What aren't you telling me? Mira asked. A pause. Then Vivian sighed. If the garden perceives you as a threat, as someone falsely claiming the bloodline or trying to steal Luna's power, it will defend itself. Violently. How violently? The last person who tried to enter without proper lineage was incinerated instantly, Cashin said, stepping forward from the crowd. His ancient eyes held a warning. There wasn't enough left to identify the body. Perfect. Just perfect. And if I do get in, Mira pressed. If the garden accepts me, what then? Then you'll face a choice, Vivian said quietly. The garden shows truth. It will reveal whether you're meant to merge with the Luna, to complete the resurrection and become her fully. Or whether you're meant to remain separate, your own person, carrying her soul but not consumed by it. And who decides? Who makes that choice? You do, Frederick said, his hand finding hers. Not the garden. Not the Luna. Not any of us. You. But if I choose wrong. There is no wrong, Vivian interrupted. Whatever the garden shows you, whatever you decide, it will be the truth of what you are. What you're meant to be. Mira wasn't sure she believed that. But she was out of options and out of time. The sun was rising higher. The alphas were watching. And somewhere inside her, the Luna's presence stirred, aware and waiting. I'm going in alone, Mira said. No. Frederick's grip on her hand tightened. I'm coming with you. You can't. You know you can't. She looked at him, memorizing his face. Just in case. The garden tests bloodline. If you come with me, it might see you as interference. Might reject us both. I don't care. I do. She pulled her hand from his, the loss of contact immediate and aching. I need to do this myself, Frederick. Need to know that whatever happens in there, whatever I choose, it's mine. My decision. Not influenced by you or the bond or anything else. The pain in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. But he nodded slowly, stepping back. Okay, he whispered. But if you're not back in 1 hour, then you can burn the whole garden down looking for me, Mira finished. She turned to face the archway before she could lose her nerve. The stones seemed to pulse as she approached, the vines shifting slightly like they were breathing. The symbols carved into the arch glowed faintly, reacting to her presence. Mira took a deep breath. Then she stepped through. The world inverted. That was the only way to describe it. One moment Mira was walking through a stone arch in a forest clearing. The next, she was standing in a place that shouldn't exist. A garden, yes, but not like any garden she'd ever seen. The flowers bloomed in colors that had no names, shades between blue and silver, between gold and green, between light and shadow. Trees grew upside down, their roots stretching toward a sky that showed both day and night simultaneously. Water flowed upward from pools that reflected stars even though the sun was shining. And in the center of it all, on a throne made of living moonlight, sat a woman. She looked exactly like Mira. Same face, same build, same dark hair. But her eyes were different, ancient, and luminous, holding centuries Mira hadn't lived. The Luna. Not the consciousness that had possessed her last night. This was different. Separate. Like looking at a reflection that had developed its own life. Hello, little fragment, the Luna said, and her voice was Myra's voice aged by centuries. I've been waiting for you. Myra's throat was dry. Are you the one who took over my body? Who spoke through me? No, that was the piece of me that lives inside you. The soul fragment that's been growing, learning, preparing. The Luna stood, her movements liquid grace. I am what remains in the beyond. The part that couldn't return to life. The memory the moon goddess preserved in this place. I don't understand. The goddess split my soul, yes. But she also split me. One piece sent back to live again, that's you. One piece kept dormant inside Frederick, that's the consciousness that woke last night. And one piece preserved here in the garden to serve as a record. A backup, if you will. The Luna smiled, and it was sad and knowing. I am the original. The template. The truth you're here to face. Mira felt dizzy. So there are 3 of you? 3 parts. 3 parts of one whole. And you, sweet Mira, are the one with a choice to make. The Luna approached, and Mira fought the urge to back away. You can merge. Take the piece inside you, the one that woke last night, and unite with it fully. Become me completely. You would have all my memories, all my power, all my knowledge. You would return to Frederick as his true mate, the woman he loved first and lost. And what happens to me? To Mira, you dissolve. Your experiences, your memories, your personality, they become part of the greater whole. Notes in a symphony instead of a solo song. The Luna's expression was gentle. It wouldn't hurt. You would simply stop being separate and start being part of something larger. Myra's hands were shaking. That's dying. You're describing death. I'm describing transformation. Evolution. Becoming what you were always meant to be. No, Mira took a step back. I was meant to be me. Mira. Not a vessel for your resurrection. Were you? The Luna tilted her head. Or have you simply been living a temporary existence? A placeholder life until I could return. The question hit like a physical blow. Because Mira had wondered that herself. Had spent her whole life feeling like she didn't quite fit. Like something was missing or wrong or incomplete. What if that feeling was because she was never meant to be permanent? I can see you're doubting, the Luna said softly. Let me make this easier. Let me show you what you'd become. She touched Myra's forehead, and the world exploded into sensation. Memories flooded through her. Not hers. The Luna's. Running through moonlit forests with Frederick at her side, young and wild and in love. Dancing at ceremonies where magic was common as breathing. Singing the old songs, the ones that made reality bend and reshape. Wielding power so vast it could calm hurricanes or wake earthquakes. Being loved, revered, essential. Being whole. And beneath it all, the bond with Frederick. Not the fractured, uncertain thing Mira felt. But complete. Total. A connection so deep it was like sharing one soul between two bodies. The memories were intoxicating. Seductive. Everything Mira had ever wanted, power, purpose, belonging, love that didn't question or doubt. All she had to do was say yes. Stop fighting. Let go. Become the Luna. The memories faded, leaving Mira gasping. You see, the Luna said, this could be yours. All of it. You would never feel lost again. Never wonder where you belong. You would be complete. Myra's vision was blurry with tears. And what about the life I've lived? The things I've survived? Do they just disappear? They become part of the foundation. The experiences that shaped this body, this vessel, into something strong enough to hold me. The Luna's smile was almost kind. You've done well, Mira. Better than I could have hoped. You've made this form resilient and brave and perfect. Now you can rest. Let me take it from here. Rest. The word was so tempting. She was so tired. Tired of being strange. Tired of fighting. Tired of wondering if she was real or just an echo. What if the Luna was right? What if merging was the answer? What if becoming whole, even if it meant losing herself, was worth it? I can feel your temptation, the Luna said gently. And I understand. You've been alone so long. But you don't have to be anymore. Choose merger. Choose wholeness. Choose. No. The word came from somewhere deep inside Mira. Somewhere that had nothing to do with logic or fear or exhaustion. Somewhere that was entirely, defiantly hers. No, the Luna repeated, genuinely surprised. No, Mira said again, stronger this time. I'm not choosing merger. I'm not dissolving into you. I'm not sacrificing my existence so you can have a second life. But you would be complete. I am complete. Myra's voice shook but held firm. I'm complete exactly as I am. Broken and strange and exile and all of it. That's my life. Mine. Not a placeholder. Not a temporary arrangement. Mine. The Luna's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in her ancient eyes. Even if it means staying fractured? Carrying a soul that isn't entirely yours? Living with the knowledge that part of you will always be someone else. Yes, Mira said. Because that's still better than not living at all. And Frederick? You would deny him his true mate? The woman he loved first. The question struck deep. But Mira thought of last night. Of Frederick choosing her over the Luna. Choosing the present over the past. I'm not denying him anything, Mira said. I'm giving him the same choice I'm making. To be present. To love what is, not what was. If he can't do that, if he needs the Luna more than he wants me, then we're not meant to be anyway. Silence filled the garden. The Luna stared at her and Mira stared back, refusing to back down. Then, slowly, the Luna smiled. A real smile. Warm and genuine and approving. There she is, the Luna said softly. There's the strength I've been waiting for. Mira blinked. What? Did you think this was about convincing you to merge? The Luna laughed, the sound like bells. Oh, little fragment. This was a test. The real test. Not of bloodline or power. Of will. Of self. Of whether you were strong enough to choose yourself over the easy path. I don't understand. The merger was never going to happen, the Luna said. The moon goddess didn't split my soul to resurrect me. She split it to create you. A new person, carrying pieces of what I was, but becoming something entirely your own. The fragment inside you, the one that woke last night, it's not me trying to take over. It's your power. Ancient power, yes, tied to my bloodline. But yours to command. Myra's mind was reeling. So you're not going to. I'm not going anywhere. I can't. I'm dead, Mira. Truly dead. This place, this garden, it's my echo, preserved by divine intervention. But I'm not alive. Not really. The Luna reached out, her hand passing through Myra's cheek like mist. You are. You're the living continuation. And you just proved you're worthy of it. By refusing to merge. By choosing yourself. By claiming your right to exist as your own person, not as my second chance. The Luna's expression was proud. That's the strength the world needs. Not another Luna following the old paths. But someone new. Someone who's lived in exile and survived. Someone who knows what it means to be feared and still chooses compassion. Mira felt something shift inside her. The binding, the magical chains that had been suppressing her power, suddenly felt different. Not broken, but recognized. Acknowledged. And then it shattered. Power flooded back into her like a dam breaking. But it was different than before. Stronger. Clearer. Not just her voice, her small, strange abilities. This was the moon's choir. The full weight of it. The ancient song that had lived dormant inside her, waiting for her to be strong enough to claim it. Mira gasped as the power settled into her bones, into her blood, into every cell of her being. It felt like coming home and discovering a new country all at once. What's happening? She managed. You're awakening, the Luna said. Fully. Completely. Not as me. As you. Mira, the moonborn. Mira, who carries the choir. Mira, who chose herself and in doing so proved herself worthy of power that could reshape the world. The garden around them began to change. The impossible flowers bloomed brighter. The upside-down trees straightened. The dual sky unified into a single, perfect twilight. The garden accepts you, the Luna said. Not as my vessel. As my heir. Go back, Mira. Go back and show them what you really are. Wait. What about the fragment inside me? The consciousness that woke last night? That's your power learning to speak. Learning to protect you. It will be part of you now, not separate. You won't lose control again unless you choose to let it guide you. The Luna smiled. Think of it as instinct. Ancient instinct. Use it wisely. Mira wanted to ask more, to understand completely, but the garden was already fading. The Luna with it, her form dissolving into moonlight and memory. Thank you, Mira called out. For whatever this was. The Luna's voice came back one last time, distant and fond. Thank you for being brave enough to be yourself. Now go. They're waiting. Mira stumbled back through the archway into chaos. The clearing had erupted into violence. Malek stood in the center, shifted into his wolf form, massive and silver black, his colorless eyes gleaming with triumph. Around him, his wolves had surrounded Frederick, who was bleeding from multiple wounds, but still standing, still fighting. She's been gone too long, Malek's voice rang out, human words from a wolf's throat. The garden has rejected her, which means she was a fraud. Which means Frederick's judgment is compromised. Which means you're an idiot, Mira said. Every head turned. She stood in the archway, and she knew she looked different. Felt different. Power radiated from her skin like heat, visible as a faint silver glow. Her eyes, she couldn't see them, but she felt them change, felt them reflect the light in ways they never had before. The mark on her chest, where Talia had burned her last night, had transformed into a symbol. The same symbol that marked Frederick's skin. Luna's mark. The Moonborn. Impossible, Malik breathed. The binding is broken, Mira said calmly. Because it was never meant to hold. Not when I claimed my power fully. She walked forward, and wolves scrambled to get out of her way. The air around her shimmered with each step, reality bending slightly in her presence. Frederick stared at her, his expression caught between awe and relief, and something that looked like love so profound it hurt to witness. Mira, he said, like he needed confirmation it was really her. It's me, she assured him. Still me. Just more me than before. Malik snarled. This proves nothing. She could be possessed, could be. I'm not possessed, Mira interrupted. I'm awakened. There's a difference. She looked at the assembled alphas, at their fear and wonder and suspicion. The Luna's garden accepted me. Not as a vessel for resurrection. As an heir. As someone worthy of carrying the ancient bloodline forward. Lies, Malik spat. The garden has been dormant for centuries. Look behind me, Mira said simply. They did. The archway, which had been covered in dying vines and weathered stone, was transformed. The vines bloomed with flowers that glowed soft silver. The stone had been restored to its original glory, symbols blazing with light. And beyond the arch, visible to everyone now, was a glimpse of the impossible garden. Proof. Undeniable proof. The garden wakes when it recognizes true bloodline, Vivian said quietly, her voice filled with wonder. It hasn't done that in 300 years, Cashin finished. Not since the first Luna died. All eyes turned back to Mira. She could feel their fear, their uncertainty, but also in some of them hope. The possibility that maybe the old magic wasn't lost. That maybe something new is beginning. I'm not here to rule you, Mira said, her voice carrying across the clearing. I'm not here to challenge your authority or demand your loyalty. I'm here because someone tried to kill Frederick, and I couldn't let him die. Everything else, the bond, the power, the awakening, that's just what happened because of one choice. The choice to save a life. Pretty words, Malik said, but his voice had lost its certainty. But power like yours is a threat, whether you intend it or not. Then I guess you'll have to trust that I'll use it wisely, Mira said. Or you can challenge me. Try to take me down. See how that works out for you. It was a bluff. Mostly. She had power now, vast power, but she had no idea how to use it. The choir hummed in her blood, but she didn't know the words yet. Didn't know how to shape it into anything more than intimidation. But Malik didn't know that. He stared at her, calculating, and she stared back, refusing to show weakness. Then Frederick stepped forward, moving to stand beside her despite his injuries. You want to challenge someone, he said quietly, challenge me. Properly. Single combat. Winner takes authority over the Northern Territories. Malik's eyes gleamed. Gladly. No, Mira started. But Frederick's hand found hers, squeezing once. Trust me. The challenge was formal. Binding. Single combat shifted until one submitted or died. Malik was fresh. Strong. Furious. Frederick was wounded. Exhausted. But his eyes held a certainty that made Myra's chest tight. They shifted simultaneously. Frederick's wolf was enormous, dark-furred with the same golden eyes, his body marked with glowing symbols that carried into his shifted form. Malik was larger, silver-black, built for brutality. They circled each other, and the clearing fell silent. Then Malik lunged. The fight was vicious, fast and brutal and terrifying to watch. Malik had size and strength. Frederick had speed and experience. They tore into each other, blood staining the ground, snarls echoing through the forest. Mira wanted to interfere. wanted to use her newly awakened power to stop this. But she felt the choir inside her whispering, "Wait. Watch. Trust." Frederick was losing. Slowly but surely, Malek's size advantage was winning out. He pinned Frederick, jaws closing toward his throat. And Mira sang. Not loud, not aggressive. Just a single note, pure and clear. The effect was instantaneous. Frederick's wounds began to heal. Not completely, but enough. Enough to give him strength for one more surge. That's interference. Malek roared, shifting back to human to protest. No, Vivian said, stepping forward. Mate bonds allow for support. She's not fighting for him. She's sustaining him. That's allowed under the old laws. Malek's face twisted with fury. Then I'll kill her too. He shifted again, turning toward Mira, and that was his mistake. Because Frederick was already moving. He hit Malek from behind, jaws finding the back of his neck, and bore him to the ground. The fight was over in seconds. Frederick's teeth at Malek's throat, the silver-black wolf whining in submission. Yield, Frederick commanded, his voice rough even in shifted form. For a long moment, Malek didn't move. Then, slowly, he bared his throat. Yielded. Frederick released him and stepped back, shifting to human. He was covered in blood and wounds, but his eyes blazed with triumph. The Northern Territories remain mine, he said. And anyone else who wants to challenge my authority, now's the time. Silence. No one moved. Then, one by one, the alphas began to lower their heads. Not in submission. In acknowledgement. Frederick was still king. And Mira. Mira was the Luna who'd chosen herself. But as the crowd began to disperse, as wolves shifted and conversations started, Mira felt it. A tremor. Not in the ground. Deeper. In the magic itself. She turned toward the forest, her new senses screaming warning. Something was coming. Something that had felt the garden wake. Felt her power activate. Something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. In the distance, between the trees, she saw eyes. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Glowing red instead of gold or green or amber. Not wolves. Something else. Frederick, she said quietly. He was at her side instantly, following her gaze. His expression went cold. Shadow beasts, he said. I thought they were extinct. What are shadow beasts? Mira asked. The things that tried to cross through the veil when my mate died. When the tear between worlds formed. His jaw tightened. The moon goddess sealed them away. They shouldn't be able to exist here. And yet, Stellan said grimly, joining them, there they are. The red eyes multiplied. Grew closer. And Mira realized with sickening clarity that her awakening hadn't just called to the wolves. It had called to everything. Including the things that fed on ancient power. The things that wanted to devour the Moo-born before she could learn to fight back. To arms, Frederick commanded, his voice carrying across the clearing. We have company. And they're not here to talk. The shadow beasts emerged from the forest like a wave of living darkness. And Mira, who'd just claimed her power, who'd just chosen herself, realized she was going to have to fight for that choice. With enemies she didn't understand. Using power she didn't know how to control. Standing beside a mate who'd chosen her over centuries of grief. The first beast lunged. And Mira opened her mouth and sang. The choir that poured from Myra's throat wasn't music. It was creation and destruction woven together. It was moonlight given voice. It was every song her grandmother had hummed, every lullaby sung over dying wolves, every note that had ever made the world pause and listen. But louder, clearer, undeniable. The shadow beasts stopped mid-lunge, frozen as if they'd hit an invisible wall. Their red eyes flickered, confused, as the sound wrapped around them like chains made of starlight. Mira didn't know what she was doing. Didn't know the words or the melody or the proper technique. She just knew that these things, these creatures born of tears between worlds, didn't belong here. And her power knew how to tell them so. The song rose, building, and the shadow beasts began to dissolve. Not violently. Not painfully. just unmade. Returned to whatever darkness had birthed them, sent back through cracks in reality that sealed behind them as they passed. In 30 seconds, it was over. The forest was empty again. The red eyes gone. The threat vanished like it had never existed. Mira stopped singing, swaying on her feet, and Frederick caught her before she could fall. "I've got you," he murmured, his arms solid around her. "Always." The clearing was silent. Every wolf, every alpha, every witness stood frozen, staring at what they'd just seen. "The Moonborn," someone whispered. Maybe Vivian. Maybe Cashin. It was hard to tell. "The choir made flesh," another voice added, awed and afraid in equal measure. Mira looked up at Frederick, at his golden eyes that held wonder and concern, and something deeper that made her heart skip. "Did I just?" "You just unmade shadow beasts with a song," he said. "Something that hasn't been done since the first Luna walked the earth." His hand came up to cup her face. "You were magnificent." "I was terrified," she admitted. "That too." His smile was soft. "But you didn't run. You didn't hide. You stood your ground and you sang and you saved us all." "We saved each other," Mira corrected, her hand finding the wounds on his chest that were still healing. "I'm pretty sure you did most of the work with Malek. We'll call it a team effort." Around them, the alphas were starting to recover from their shock. Starting to talk, to process, to figure out what this meant for the balance of power and politics and everything they thought they knew about their world. But Mira couldn't focus on that. Could only focus on the man holding her, and the choice she'd made in the garden, and the power that still hummed in her blood like a second heartbeat. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Frederick was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing her cheekbone in a gesture that had become familiar. Comforting. "Now," he said, "we figure it out. Together. What it means that you're the Moonborn. What it means that the garden woke. What it means that shadow beasts are somehow returning when they shouldn't be able to exist." That sounds complicated. It is. But he smiled, and it was the first genuine, unguarded smile she'd seen from him. "I've got time. Centuries of it if the universe is kind. And I'd like to spend them watching you figure out who you are. Who you're becoming." Myra's throat tightened. "Even though I'm not her? Not your first mate. Especially because you're not her." Frederick's expression was serious now. "I loved her. I'll always carry that. But Mira, you're not the echo of something I lost. You're the beginning of something I never knew I could have. Something new and strange and absolutely terrifying in the best possible way." "Is this the thing you weren't ready to say last night?" Mira asked, her heart hammering. "Part of it." He leaned his forehead against hers, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "The rest is that I'm falling in love with you. Not the bond. Not the prophecy. Not the power. You. The exile who chose herself. The woman who sang to a dying stranger. The person who looked at an impossible choice and made it anyway." Tears pricked at Myra's eyes. "That's a lot of pressure for someone you've known less than 48 hours. I know. I'm terrible at timing. Add it to my list of flaws." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "You don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel it. I just needed you to know." Mira kissed him. It was impulsive and probably stupid and absolutely perfect. His lips were warm and slightly chapped and tasted like blood and wild forest and coming home. He made a surprise sound that turned into something deeper, his arms tightening around her as he kissed her back with the kind of desperation that came from 3 centuries of loneliness finally ending. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mira was smiling. "I don't know if I love you yet," she said honestly. "I don't know if what I feel is the bond or my own heart or some combination I can't untangle. But I know I want to find out. I know that when you chose me over the Luna, when you chose the present over the past, something in me decided you were worth keeping." Frederick's laugh was breathless and joyful. "Worth keeping. I'll take it." "Good. Because I don't think you have a choice. We're bonded now, for better or worse." "Definitely better," he said, and kissed her again. Around them, someone cleared their throat. Loudly. They broke apart to find Stellan watching them with fond exasperation. As touching as this is, he said dryly, we have 9 alphas waiting for some kind of statement about what happens next. And several dozen wolves who just watched their reality get rewritten. Maybe save the romance for later. Frederick sighed. You're terrible at reading moments. I'm excellent at reading political necessity. Come on. Both of you. Reluctantly, they separated. Frederick kept hold of Myra's hand, though, his fingers laced through hers like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Together, they turned to face the assembled wolves. Vivian stepped forward first, and to Myra's surprise, she bowed. Actually bowed, her silver hair falling forward, her head lowered in genuine respect. Newborn, she said formally. The Western Pacts acknowledge your awakening and offer alliance. One by one, the other alphas followed. Even Garrick, Myra's old alpha, the one who'd exiled her, lowered his head in recognition. Only Malek remained standing, his expression dark with fury and humiliation. But he was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and he knew it. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Power like hers, it's dangerous. Uncontrolled. She'll destroy everything, given time. Or save it, Cashin said quietly. I suppose we'll find out. Malek turned and stalked away, his remaining wolves following. But his words lingered. Dangerous. Uncontrolled. Mira knew he was right, at least partially. She had power now, vast, ancient power, but no training. No understanding of its limits or proper use. She'd unmade shadow beasts on instinct, but what about next time? What if her instinct was wrong? Stop, Frederick murmured beside her, clearly reading her spiraling thoughts through the bond. One crisis at a time. Right now, you're alive. You're yourself. You're standing here having made an impossible choice and come out the other side. That's enough for today. He was right. It had to be enough. Because she was exhausted. Bone deep, soul tired, wrung out from fear and power and emotions too big to process. Can we go somewhere quiet? She asked. Just for a little while? Frederick's smile was understanding. I know just the place. He took her to a hot spring hidden deeper in the forest, far from the politics and the watching eyes and the weight of expectations. They sat on the edge, feet in the warm water, and watched the sun climb higher into the morning sky. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The bond hummed between them, comfortable and settled, no longer pulling or demanding. Just present. After a long while, Mira finally asked the question that had been building. What do you think the shadow beasts mean? Why would they appear now? Frederick was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But if they're returning, if the veil between worlds is weakening again, it means something bigger is happening. Something beyond you and me and pack politics. Something dangerous. Probably. He looked at her. But we'll face it. Together. Together, Mira echoed. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, and for just this moment, everything else could wait. The questions about her power. The politics of being moonborn. The threat of shadow beasts and weakening veils and whatever darkness was coming. For now, there was just this. 2 people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances. 2 souls that had chosen each other despite, or maybe because of, how complicated it all was. Thank you, Mira said softly. For what? For choosing me. When the Luna offered you everything you'd lost, when you could have had her back, you chose me instead. You chose the present. Frederick turned to look at her, his golden eyes serious. I didn't choose the present over the past, Mira. I chose truth over fantasy. You're real. She was a memory. And I've lived in memories long enough to know they can't keep you warm at night. Can't challenge you or surprise you or grow with you. His hand found hers again. I chose you because you're the only thing in 3 centuries that's felt like a future worth having. Myra's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. No pressure, right? Mountains of it, he agreed. But I think you can handle it. You've handled everything else. Had she though? Or had she just survived, stumbled through, made it by sheer stubbornness and luck? But looking at Frederick, at the faith in his eyes, the certainty, Mira thought maybe that was enough. Maybe survival was its own kind of strength. Maybe choosing yourself, even when the world offered you easier paths, was the bravest thing you could do. She'd been alone for so long. Exiled. Strange. Wrong. But she wasn't wrong. She was just different. And different, it turned out, was exactly what the world needed. Somewhere in the forest, a wolf howled. Then another. And another. Not a threat. A song. A welcome. The packs were accepting her. Slowly, warily, but accepting nonetheless. Mira closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. Let herself feel the weight of it, the responsibility, the possibility, the terrifying, beautiful reality of being seen. She'd spent 4 years trying to be invisible. Now she was anything but. Moonborn. Luna's heir. The woman who'd chosen herself. And she had no idea what came next. But she knew, with the kind of certainty that came from surviving impossible things, that she'd face it. Would learn to wield her power properly. Would figure out what it meant to carry an ancient bloodline forward. Would stand beside Frederick as he rebuilt his authority and navigate the politics of a world that was changing whether it wanted to or not. She'd face the shadow beasts when they returned. Face the questions about the weakening veil. Face whatever darkness was stirring because her awakening had rung through reality like a bell. She'd face it all. Because she was Mira. Exile. Moonborn. Survivor. And she'd already made the hardest choice to exist. To claim her right to be herself, separate and whole and real. Everything else was just details. Would you have chosen her side? When the world offered the easy path, merge, become whole, stop fighting, would you have had the strength to choose yourself anyway? When power whispered that you were just an echo, just a placeholder, just temporary, would you have believed it? Or would you have stood your ground and demanded your right to exist? This is Myra's story. The girl who sang to save a dying wolf and discovered she was the song itself. The exile who became the moonborn. The fragment who chose to stay fractured rather than dissolve into someone else's resurrection. But it's more than that. It's the story of what it means to be seen. To be strange. To carry power that frightens people and choose compassion anyway. It's the story of a love that chose the present over the past. Of a bond that formed not because of fate, but because of choice. It's the story of every person who's ever felt like they don't quite fit. Like something about them is wrong or too much or incomprehensible to the world around them. And it's the story of claiming yourself anyway. If this story lit something inside you, if Myra's choice resonated with the parts of yourself you've been told to hide or diminish or apologize for, then you belong here. Subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, we tell tales that burn. Tales about the exiles and the strange ones. The people who carry power they don't understand. The lovers who choose truth over comfort. The warriors who fight with songs instead of swords. We tell stories where being different isn't a flaw to fix, it's a gift to claim. Where the girl who doesn't fit finds out she was never meant to fit into spaces too small for her magic. Where choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's the bravest thing you can do. Myra's journey is just beginning. The shadow beasts will return. The veil will continue weakening. Enemies will rise who see her power as a threat rather than a miracle. And she'll have to learn to wield the choir before it consumes her or before someone else tries to steal it. She'll face betrayal and doubt and moments when merging with the Luna seems easier than fighting to remain herself. She'll stand beside Frederick as they navigate a bond deeper than either of them expected. As they build something new from the ashes of his grief and her exile. She'll discover secrets about her bloodline, about her grandmother, about why she specifically was chosen to carry the Luna's soul. And through it all, she'll have to keep choosing herself, over and over again. That's the real magic. Not the power in her voice. Not the ancient bloodline, or the mate bond, or the awakening. The magic is in the choice. The daily, difficult, defiant choice to exist on her own terms. So tell me, is she a hero, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? Is her power salvation or destruction waiting to happen? Is the bond with Frederick fate, or just two broken people finding each other in the dark? There's only one way to find out. Stay with us, here at Cindy's Wolfheart Stories, where the wolves howl for the strange ones, where the outcasts become queens, where the song never ends, it just transforms into something new. Mira chose herself. Now the question is, will you choose to witness what she becomes?